The story begins inside a goblin's nest, with two goblins fighting for the position of chief after killing the former goblin chief. Some of the spectating goblins start discussing taking the prey the previous chief left behind for themselves. But they hesitate when they remember someone guarding them. Then they see the guardian walking past them. They start insulting him for dressing like a human and keeping the prey to himself, but he just ignores them. Then they start following him, so that he could lead them to the prey to snatch it from him. The goblin MC hears two goblins talking about a tough group of goblins who went ahead to take the prey, so hearing this, he curses inwardly and starts running. Getting closer to his destination, he hears someone screaming and begging for help, so he rushes towards the voice. Arriving at the scene, he finds a bunch of goblins trying to assault a woman, so he shouts for them to stop. They all look at him and the woman begs for his help. He tells them to stop, and one goblin calls him a freak and says that since the chief is dead, this prey is his. He growls menacingly and says that if he dares to take his prey away, he would die. He then shouts to the others to kill him. At that signal, all of the goblins lung at the MC. With bloodshot eyes, the MC tries to fight back desperately while cursing them in his heart. Getting desperate to survive this disadvantageous fight, he pulls out a stone knife and threatens to kill them all. Seeing that he has a weapon, the goblins freak out and start running away in fear. Seeing his exhausted figure, the girl runs to him and asks if he's okay and thanks him for saving her. Not only did he not harm her but also kept protecting her, she calls him a different kind of goblin and begs him not to die. Hearing her call him a different kind of goblin and looking at his booting up system, he thinks that he was once a human too. But he didn't expect that instead of meeting God after being hit by a truck, he would be transported to another world with a system. But that system hasn't fully activated yet. Other than showing him his stats, it doesn't have any other functions as of yet. However, he hasn't been idle these past few days. From what this woman has told him, he has gained some understanding of this world. This world created by gods has various powerful monsters, and humans have carved their place on this continent with their strength. But the goblin he reincarnated as is the weakest and most filthy monster in this world. His stats are really low, even among goblins, and he could easily be killed. But there is a way to get stronger, and that is to mate with females. Goblins have the ability to get stronger through constant mating and reproduction, but they have no females. So to reproduce, they can only mate with other female creatures, which is why they constantly plunder. But since he used to be human, doing such a thing is difficult for him. Looking at his depressed figure, the girl tries to cheer him up, saying not to worry, since after spending these days with him she understands that he is very different and that he doesn't want to live with these goblins. He looks at her but says nothing, prompting her to continue by saying that when the Night Order comes to rescue her, she'll tell them that he saved her. Since she believes that the Night Order is always fair and just, they will definitely agree to let him live in the village. He thinks that it's possible, even if his system doesn't activate, as long as he can hold out until the humans come to rescue them and gain their protection. He can survive first, then slowly figure out how to activate the system. They suddenly hear the noise of the goblins coming back, so he jumps up in panic and tells her to hide first, to which she agrees and hides behind a rock. Arriving at their location, he sees a goblin running desperately while screaming that needs to mate to become stronger to survive and mentions humans. But he quickly gets his throat sliced by the MC. After piecing together the situation, he turns to the girl and tells her that the humans are probably here to rescue her, leading her to shout in joy that it must be the Holy Order and urges him to go check. On their way, they see a knight using his sword chi technique to kill a bunch of goblins. After finishing, he curses these filthy creatures for tearing his Holy Order uniform. Checking his status window, the MC sees his name which loader as well as the rest of his stat, including his overall combat power of 400. Looking at this, the MC wonders if this is really a human, since it's his first time seeing such high stats since he came to this world. Overjoyed by this encounter, The girl rushes to him while announcing their presence. But before they could feel relieved, the knight suddenly swung his sword at the girl, fully intending on cutting her in half. The MC barely manages to push her back in the nick of time. They tumble backward, while the MC wonders why they are attacking and aren't they here to rescue people. He wonders if it's because the cave is too dark and he mistook the girl for a goblin. Looking at them disdainfully, the knight says that it's a disgrace that a goblin dodged his attack. The girl calls him commander and says that it's her, Kelia. With the same look in his eyes, he tells her to shut up and that he knows who she is, but since she'd been defiled by goblins, she might even be carrying a goblin's spawn, so it's ridiculous for a filthy thing like her to expect mercy from him, so she should go repent for her sins to the Great Holy Mother. She looks at him in shock and fear and asks him to wait, saying that although she was captured, she wasn't defiled by the goblins because that goblin protected her. He raises his sword and tells her that if she's going to make up stories, she should at least make them believable, thinking that she's making a fool out of him and preparing to send her to the afterlife alongside these vermin. The MC rushes forward and pushes her back, telling her to run to the exit quickly. He grabs a wooden club and prepares to clash with the knight while cursing inwardly that he didn't expect this outcome. But before they could clash, someone suddenly casts a barrier around the MC and tells the knight to wait. Looking at the newcomer, they see a holy priestess leading a platoon of knights, saying that this goblin is strange. The girl, finding a ray of hope, crawls to the priestess while asking to be saved. The holy maiden picks her up and hands her to the knight before turning to the goblin and asking if he could understand her. Looking at her, he thinks that she must be the holy maiden Freya, the spokesperson of the temple they talked about. And that if he wants to leave here, this might be his only hope, so he quickly says that he can. He then asks her if she's the holy maiden they mentioned and that he's actually not a monster of this world and that he used to be human but became like this because of an accident, so he can explain everything if he can go with her. The knight exclaims that he does seem smarter than other goblins, which is quite rare. She agrees, saying that goblins are usually stupid and lowly creatures, they can't speak and think fluently, so he might be a gift from the Holy Mother. She turns to the girl and asks if he really didn't hurt her, to which she confirms, saying that not only did he not hurt her, but he also protected her from other goblins and gave her food. The holy maiden agrees to take him back first and make a decision after studying the matter thoroughly, which made the girl overjoyed. She asks if he's willing and he agrees, thinking that he finally found someone who can listen to reason, and since staying means death, he might as well go back and prove his innocence. She removes the barrier and turns around, ready to leave. He thanks her for her kindness, saying that he would repay her properly, but before he could finish, she smiles menacingly and says of course. At the same time, the knight suddenly plunges his sword into the girl's stomach, killing her on the spot. In horror, the MC turns back only to see her falling figure, leaving him completely shocked. The unholy maiden looks back at him with an evil smile, telling him to repay her well when they get back, sending shivers down his spine. 1 week later in the village, we see the knight giving a speech, saying that the goblin raid has brought great harm to Bright Town and that the goblins used a despicable sneak attack to slaughter 30 residents of this town, which enrages the crowd, leading them to shout in chaos. The knight continues by touching the list of victims, including the girl from earlier, and saying that the Holy Order, on behalf of the temple, has purged these goblins and avenged the harmed villagers. The holy maiden goes forward and spreads her arms, telling them to continue praying devoutly to the temple, and the temple will always protect her devout followers, leading the residents to shout "Long live the knights and the temple." Back at her office, she comments on today's successful sermon and the people's foolishness, saying that now they will pray even more devoutly to the temple and offer more tributes. On the other side of the room, the MC, chained to the wall and with a metal-mouthed guard, called out to her. She looks at his pathetic figure with his eye gouged out, his head bloodied and disfigured and his whole body bruised and bloodied from all the torture. He starts cursing her with a bloodshot eye, calling her a damn bitch. She asks if he's still alive and compliments his strong vitality and says that it's no wonder that the knights can't eradicate goblins from the continent. She suggests seeing how poison would affect him this time. He shouts that she deceived him, deceived everyone and killed Kelia. He asks if this is her holy order? Her so-called human justice? She stabs his mouth with a stick, asking how dare a weak and trashy creature, a lustful goblin, question human justice. She tells him that Kelia was bewitched by him and dared to speak for him, and that's a betrayal of humanity and the holy order. So her death was her final loyalty. She continues saying with a sadistic smile that goblins are nothing but vermin on this continent, and that for her, the holy maiden, to even speak to him is a great favor, so he should be grateful and use his small, disgusting body to contribute to human and holy order experiments. She then proceeds to torture him with magic, leading the light in his eye to start fading. He asks himself if he's going to die, and that he is unwilling to die like this. He thinks that it's all his fault for being foolish. He foolishly held on to human compassion even after reincarnating as a low-level goblin, thinking they were righteous and kind. Weakness and naivety were his deadliest mistakes. After being taken back to the human village, Loder and Freya tortured and toyed with him in every possible way, never believing a word he said. He did last long, being toyed to death by a sadistic bitch. He tells himself that if he could do it again, he would never trust humans. If could do it again, he would grind their bones and drain their blood. If only he could live again. He then suddenly opens his eyes and questions if he's still alive and where he is right now. A system notification suddenly pops up saying that the Goblin Life Simulation System has been activated. It starts evaluating, and when finished it tells him that he is dead. It says that due to his foolishness, he forgot that he was a goblin. Humans will never trust goblins, nor will they pity them. He died after being tortured and tormented. The pain of this week's torture is imprinted on his soul, and he will never forget the pain humans brought him. It continues by telling him that his end is one of the worst fates for any transmigrator, then asks him if wants to start over. Looking at his system, he wonders if it only activates after death. He asks the system what yes and no represent, to which the system informs him that if chooses no, his soul will dissipate and die completely. If he chooses yes, he will retain his current memory and system and be sent back to the Goblin Cave a week ago. He thinks for a while, then smiles menacingly, thinking of getting his revenge on Loder and Freya. He clicks yes while thinking of his revenge, and his soul starts to glow brightly, prompting a notification that Goblin Life 2.0 begins. And to help him survive a bit longer, the system has slightly strengthened him. Back in the cave, he thinks that it indeed only strengthened him a bit, but it's better than nothing. He gets a notification saying that although he has been reborn, the danger is not over. The human holy order is about to reach the host, so it advises him to take note that if he dies again, the system will not be able to revive him. He asks the system for possible actions he could take, to which system informs him that can simulate his life with this system to foresee future events. Each simulation requires 24 hours, and after every simulation he will earn points, which can be exchanged for items. Reading to this point, he tells the system to start a simulation immediately. After analyzing his current situation, the system presents him 3 choices he could take. The first is to warn fellow goblins and unite to face Loder and men, which would give him 10 points. The second option is to abandon other goblins and escape alone, giving him 5 points. And finally the third option, to hide in the cave and pray Loder and his men don't find him, which of course wouldn't net him any points. Looking at these options, he thinks that although there are 3 options, he's sure that even if all the goblins in the cave unite, they can't match Loder alone. So only escaping can save him. He decides to simulate the first option first and choose later the option with the highest score, and if he can exchange for a weapon, he might be able to defeat them with a sneak attack. After simulating the first option, the system tells him that he failed, saying that he led the goblins in a desperate battle against Loder, but due to the large gap in strength he was slain by Loader and his men since he overestimated the goblin's strength. In summary, it tells him to recognize his strength before making a decision and awards him 10 points. Seeing the points and already expecting that result, he opens the system shop and searches for a weapon that he could buy with only 10 points. He finally finds a dagger that gives him 10% speed and 15 strength. He buys the dagger and compliments its sharpness, thinking that if he could hit a vital spot, it could be a one-hit kill. He then turns back to the system and asks it about Kelia and why she's not here. The system informs him that due to his rebirth some timeline details have changed. In this timeline, she was not captured by goblins and continues to live happily in the village. Hearing this, he smiles gently and says that it looks like he fulfilled his promise to her. In that case, he has no more concerns. Thinking of how to escape, he takes the narrowest passage out, and since its entrance is the smallest, the guards outside should be weaker. Reaching the entrance, he hears the two guards chatting. One of them says that they got it easy, since any goblin that runs out of this small entrance is trash and he could crush it with one hammer. His friend reminds him of Loader's order to kill any girl who tries to escape in the chaos since they can't let this reach the village. The MC curses them for their rule. They even kill innocent people of their own kind, let alone a goblin like him. Thinking that he has no choice but to fight, he pinches his nose and screams in a female voice asking for help, saying that he's a girl from the village, captured by goblins. Hearing this, the knights turn to the source of the voice and one of them walks towards him with a dagger hidden behind his back. He tries to reassure what he thinks is a girl by telling her to come out and not be afraid since he's a holy knight. But just as he bends over to peek at the cave, he gets his neck sliced. Seeing his colleague frozen in place, the other guard asks what he's doing and urges him to hurry up while walking towards him. But the MC uses the first guard's body as a meat shield and dashes towards the other guy. When he gets close, he lunges and slashes at him with his dagger, leaving him with a deep wound from his shoulder to his stomach. Terrified, the guard on the ground asks how he can speak fluent human language. And then he starts begging for his life, saying that he has a family and a daughter waiting for his return. He starts making excuses by saying that he is only following orders from the Holy Order and was forced to come here. He even says that he'll bring him gold and a fresh and juicy young girl if he spares him. While grabbing a dagger from his back belt and then jumping at MC, thinking that he's distracted, but the MC cuts ahead swiftly instead. After a while, he hears Loader's voice, so he grabs the knight's equipment and walks off, promising to meet again in the future. Arriving at the scene, Loader and Freya inspect the corpses. Loader wonders what's going on and if there were goblins that slipped through the net. Freya asks him if the goblin is a mutant, since he can kill those two guards. Loader confirms, saying it must be a mutant, and if it escaped, that's not a good sign. He kicks the body of the fallen soldier and curses him for not being able to handle a single mutant goblin, calling him useless. Freya licks her lips and wonders crazily how much fun she could have if they catch him. Arriving at a safe location, the MC plops down and takes out an apple, saying that since they hate goblins so much, he'll deal with them the goblin way. Since goblins have the trait of upgrading through mating and devouring, he would breed strong offsprings and expand his influence while increasing his stats. In this life, vows to make every man's desire to be dead and make every woman moan and wail under his feet. Hearing some rustling in the bushes, he wonders if the knights caught up to him. He puts on his hood and decides to strike first, but seeing a goblin that can talk as well, he tries to stop but falls on top of it. Under him, he saw a cute goblina which shocked him and made him wonder why it has female characteristics, since as far as he knew goblins are only males. That's why they can only reproduce with other species. Scared, she starts begging for him not to hurt her, saying that she was just here to fetch water. Still confused, he wonders how she can speak full sentences. He checks her stats and sees that she's a level 3 little goblin. She has the class of God's messenger and titles of female goblin, fallen god, pure soul and God's blessing. Her stats are extremely weak, but if a male goblin mates with her, then the male goblin will become a Goblin God. He gets shocked seeing this and keeps staring at her like she's a rare commodity. Scared by his gaze, she says that she really was sent by the chief to fetch water, and if she doesn't get the water, he will beat her to death. Seeing her tear up, he apologizes, saying he didn't mean to. He patted her shoulder to comfort her, since if she keeps crying she might attract Loader and his group. After calming down, she asks in surprise if he talks normally as well, to which he affirms. She tells him that he's too kind, since other goblins just hit and scold her, so this is the first time someone has cared for her so gently. She offers him to follow her to the village if he has nowhere else to go. He grabs her firmly and asks in surprise if there really is a goblin village nearby. Since he can't be sure if Loader is still following him, this isn't the time to think about mating, the priority is to find a safe place. She blushes and says shyly that she'll take him there. He finally found a way to recruit subordinates. After getting to the tribe, goblins surrounded them while mocking them for being different. Seeing many goblins in this tribe, he decides to start here. He announced that he's here to join them, so let him see their leader. But since he's an outsider, they refused and decided to catch him first. Before they could attack, the female goblin, I'll just call her Goblina for now, rushes to defend him, saying that he's a nice guy, so they shouldn't act rashly. Suddenly, the boss shows up asking what they are doing here. The MC checks his status and sees that he's level 25, with class of priest and titles like Breeding Machine, Sly Old Fox and of course God's Blessing, with an overall combat power of 200. The MC gets serious seeing a goblin with such a high level in this tribe. The chief asks Goblina what she's doing with the outsider she brought back. She confirms that she did bring him back since he has nowhere to go, which made the chief smile creepily and order his minions to kill this freak and eat. They lunged at him in joy hearing this order, since they could eat meat, not caring about cannibalism. Grabbing his dagger, he shows it to the chief and tells him that he can make weapons. If they let him join them, he could make them stronger. Hearing this, the chief orders them to wait and gets close to the MC, grabbing his chin and inspecting him closely. After a while he tells him that he doesn't smell like he's lying and asks what kind of weapons he can make. The MC responds that as long as they find iron ore, he can make simple iron tools, while thinking of YouTube tutorials he'd seen in his past life. He thinks that given some time, he could make even better weapons than the one he has. And this priest can also speak full sentences, so it seems like the higher the level of the goblin, the smarter they are. He continues by saying that with iron tools they won't have to fear humans or monsters, which made the surrounding goblins happy. The chief agrees to give him a chance. He tells him to find the iron ore and make weapons within 3 days and he'll spare his life, and if he can't, he'll kill him and her as well. Looking at this crazy goblin's retreating figure, he confirms that he can't confront him head-on with his current strength, so he will make some iron tools to buy time and get stronger. Later, on their quest to find iron with some extra goblins, Goblina asks for them to wait a bit since they've been walking all day and she's too tired. A goblin starts kicking her and calling her ugly thing, saying that if they can't find iron ore, he will beat them to death, while the other goblins are cheering him on. He suddenly gets hit with a rock in the back of head. Turning around, he sees the MC telling them that he brought them along to find the iron ore, not to fight. He tells them that he's already told them how the ore looks, so if they want to stay alive they should find at least one piece of ore in the valley, otherwise they will all die. Hearing this threat, they get scared and start running away to look for the ore, saying that when they find the iron ore the boss won't spare him. He thinks that they are right, that even if they can make the iron tools, getting killed is just a matter of time. So remembering the notification about mating with a female goblin, he looks at Goblina and thinks that it's time to think about getting stronger. He calls to Yu, which is her real name by the way, and asks her not to cry. Whipping her tears, he bends down and tells her that as long as she's with him, he will protect her, give her meat to eat, and a warm place to stay, and no one will dare to bully her. She looks at him with blushing cheeks and asks if he's telling the truth. He says of course, he will keep his word, but since they are too weak right now, and to avoid being bullied, he needs her help to get stronger. She asks how, so he responds that if she is willing to have children with him he will get stronger. She blushes profusely and tells him that she never tried it before. He reassures her, saying that as long as she's willing, and then leans down and kisses her on the lips. Looking at him with flushed cheeks, she tells him that she wants him to get stronger and asks to have his babies, which gives him the signal to begin their night dance. During the act he gets a notification telling him that he will have a total of 7 children with you, increasing his level cap. And due to talent limit, he gains +9 to attack, +100 to health, and +10 to defense. After finishing, he checks his status and sees that he's at level 7, gaining the titles Defiler and Potential God with an overpower of 65. Looking at his body, he thinks that not only did his level increase, but even his form improved. With this, his chance of winning against the Goblin Priest is much higher. He grabs her coat and covers her up, saying that from now on she's his and he will protect her for life, to which she replies shyly that he's too kind. Suddenly, a goblin started screaming for help, saying that there are demon wolves while running with some ore. Seeing that they brought the ore as requested with some extra trouble, Lin Tian tells you to stay there and wait for him, to which she tells him to be careful. Almost eaten by the wolf, Lin Tian saves the goblin right on time by stabbing the wolf in the neck. He looks at the goblin and tells him to give him the ore, so he did. He compliments the quality and tells the goblin that if he finds him some more he will make weapons for him when they get back, to which the goblin readily agrees. Sometime later, back in the village, Lin Tian finally finished his first spear with an iron tip. He stabs the wolf's head and tells the chief and goblins to watch closely this weapon he made from iron ore. The goblin he saved jumps up and says that he really used the weapon to kill the magic wolf and save them. Tian lifts the spear and asks if they want some as well, to which they all say yes. The chief strikes the ground with his staff and says that Tian really wasn't lying about making iron tools, but if he wants to stay he has to make 50 of these weapons within 2 days. But Lin Tian smiles confidently. And 2 days later, he tossed a straw bucket full of spears towards the chief, telling him that these are what he wanted, causing the goblins to cheer for him. The chief smiles greedily, surprised that he actually did it. He then turns to the goblins and tells them that tonight everyone will feast on meat to celebrate Lin Tian joining them, which made them cheer in happiness. During the celebration, Yu approaches him with a piece of meat, saying that this is the special gift the chief saved for him. He takes the meat and starts eating it, but suddenly his veins start to bulge and he starts hurting, urging Yu to ask what's wrong with him. The chief approached them while laughing, calling Tian stupid, and that he sees through his ambition, daring to challenge him. There's only one way out. He grabs Yu's head and says that since he cares about her, he should enjoy watching this traitor get their head sliced off by his own knife. But before could proceed, his hand got sliced off cleanly. He grabs his injured arm and asks Tian in shock how could he. Lin Tian responds by saying that he's the stupid one, and that he's so damn sneaky. Since he already knew from the system that this would happen, he was just playing along. Enraged, the chief tore off his skull necklace and used it as a whip to strike at Tian, but the latter dodges to the side and counterattacks by slashing him in the back of his neck, killing him instantly. He starts announcing that from today, he is their new boss and he will lead them to attack the elves and the humans, have wild sex and have endless meat to feast on. The goblins get excited by his speech and start howling and calling him boss, so he offers them the chief's body to feast on. He starts thinking that this is just the start of his revenge. Next, he will make the elves help his tribe breed stronger next generations, not knowing that an elf is secretly watching this whole thing. Back at the elves' village, the elf princess rushes towards their chief's location. The other elf tries to stop her, but the princess refuses, saying that she has urgent news to report. Barging in her mother's room, she shouts that she has urgent news to report. But before she even started reporting, she starts blushing profusely seeing her mother being serviced by multiple elves, so she apologizes and tries to leave in embarrassment, but her mother stops her, curious about the urgent report. She starts explaining that this is about the goblins in the forest. Her mother asks what's so important, those weak and filthy low-level monsters. She responds by saying that this morning she found a dead black-haired giant bear that had been gnawed to the bone. There were signs of a fight and goblin footprints all around. And since the giant bear is one of the fiercest creatures in the forest, goblins shouldn't be able to kill such a beast. And a few days ago she saw the old chief killed by a young goblin, so this change might be related to him. Hearing all of this, the queen says that it seems the goblins have recovered a bit. She orders her daughter, Kasana, to take some people and clean them up, but not to kill them all at once and leave some alive, since the potion made from freshly extracted goblin hearts is excellent for the male elves in their tribe. So Kasana could only agree with a bright red face. The queen then tells her that since she worked hard these past few days, she could take a male elf as a reward, or more than one if she wants. But Kasana quickly leaves in embarrassment, saying that she'll go investigate more tonight and report back if she finds anything. Back at the goblin village, Lin Tian and the goblins were making their plan to attack the elves. The goblin scout reported that the enchanted forest has about 30 elf treehouses, all very tall, which means at least 70 elves in total. Tian compliments him on a job well done, promising him 2 elves when they conquer their tribe. They then disperse to sharpen their weapons. Since the priest died, Lin Tian has led the goblins to mine, make weapons and hunt monsters to level up. Later on, he continued to level up by hunting monsters, acquiring new skills while doing so, like giant fang attack, stone skin, stealth, climb and venom secretion. With the goblin's devour skill, the entire tribe has gained many skills and over levels have increased, making the overall power of the average goblin 250, while the elves are about 200, making them a bit superior. Thinking that he should be careful about their raid on the elves, he decides to launch a simulation. The results are that, leading the goblins on a raid confident of success, he would fall in a trap and be ambushed and shot down by the elves, which will result in him being captured and hanged in the forest as a warning to the goblins. In summary, although the plan looks foolproof, it's actually under someone else's control, which gives him a score of 0 and no rewards. Seeing this result, Lin Tian thinks that there's only one explanation, and that is they are being monitored by the elves. Goblins have keen hearing and smell, so if focused, he should be able to find some clues. After a while, he found it. Later, we see the elves rushing back to inform the queen about the goblins' raid plan. But they are intercepted by arrows that even manage to hit Kassan, making her scream in pain. She falls down, and can't seem to use any strength at all. Unable to move, she wonders if she's been poisoned. Lin Tian approaches her while saying that he didn't expect to catch her so easily and she showed up just in time. He then orders the goblins to take them all back. Later on, he tells the goblin to wake her up, so the latter pours water on her to wake her quickly. Lin Tian grabs her face and thinks that it seems that the body fluids of goblins have a special paralyzing effect on female creatures, which gives them an even better chance of winning against the matriarchal elves. Shaking in anger, she calls him a lowly creature, asking how dare he kidnap her, the princess, and even try to attack the elves. She continues by shouting that if not for her mother's kindness, the elves would have annihilated them long ago, so if he dares to touch a single hair of hers, her mother will not let him go. He smirks and responds in sarcasm about the kindness she mentioned, finding it amusing. He continues by saying that elves she speaks of and elves his subordinates speak of seem to be quite different. His subordinates may be foolish, but they never lie. The elves could have wiped them out long ago, but there are still many goblins in this forest. It can't be just out of kindness, which reminds her of her mother's words earlier about leaving some alive. Lin Tian finished by saying that there's no more need to explain, He will lead the tribe tonight and get to the bottom of it. He turns to his subordinates and orders them to divide and devour the 2 dead elves and absorb their skills. As for her, we all know what, leaving her shaking and begging him not to do it. After finishing, he got the notification that he reached the level cap of 30, and since his aptitude has reached its maximum, it was converted into plus 50 hydrogen phosphide, plus 10 strength, and plus 10 defense. He also acquired the elf skills of stealth and night vision. At the elves' village, the queen is still having fun with the other male elves, but they can't go on, so she laments not having captured more goblins earlier to make the potion. Blissfully unaware of what's to come, she turns to the guards and asks about Kasana's whereabouts, to which the latter responds by saying that the princess left quite a while ago and should have returned by now. He continues by saying that he thinks they should send some people to check the situation and kill some goblins to level up some of their warriors at the same time. She agrees, telling him to take some warriors and support Kasana. But suddenly, she hears a voice telling them that their princess won't be coming back, making them on full alert. He shoots 2 poisoned arrows, one which kills the guard instantly, but the other the queen manages to grab it with her hand, still shocked by this turn of events. He informs her that Kasana has already been caught by him and will soon have his child, and that they are going to become families soon. Enraged, she grabs a sword and asks what he has done to her daughter. He taunts her by saying, "What do you think?" which leads her to rush at him in anger, saying that she'll kill him. Easily dodging her attack, he tells her that her village has been besieged, and if she surrenders obediently, he will consider treating her well. Finally feeling the effects of the poison from the arrow, she falls down, unable to move. He informs her the arrow she caught was covered with goblin fluid. Once she comes in contact with it, she'll be paralyzed very quickly, so he suggests she behave herself. She curses and tells her that when he was outside, he heard her talking about upgrading her warriors and stimulating potions. So it turns out the elves have always been using goblins this way, but he guessed she didn't expect the goblins to one day come settle the score with them. Looking at Tian, she wonders if he's the new leader her daughter told her about. Suddenly some fighting noise was heard outside, prompting the queen to ask what's going on and Tian to say that it seems like it's about time. He takes her towards the window to show her the scene outside and says in a jovial tone that it's time to talk about their cooperation. Looking down, she is shocked by the scene of her followers dying and begging for help. She shouts at him, to which he tells her that the goblins are no longer weaker than the elves, so she doesn't have the ability to resist. When the elves had power, they slaughtered the goblins, so it's only natural for them to seek revenge when they have become powerful, so he advises her to face reality. He tells her that needs stronger warriors, so he still needs her. As for whether she lives or dies after that, it all depends on her attitude as the Holy Mother. She starts begging him that as long as he doesn't kill her children, as long as they can still live, she will do whatever he wants her to do. She's willing to bring them to stay with him and give birth to his children. Sometime later, Kasana is crying to her mother about their situation. Her mother apologizes to her, saying that it's her fault for underestimating them. Now the elves are only left with women and children, so to preserve their bloodline they need to mate with the goblins. She tells her that from now on they can only depend on the goblins. Lin Tian approaches them and says that they should stay inside and wait to give birth, and he will arrange their meals every day. And if anyone has bad intentions, he will kill them all. The queen says that she understands but has a request. She wants to take care of the children she just birthed, looking at them playing with you. He wonders if it's because of her attribute of boundless maternal love. Yu interjects by saying that she can't handle all the children alone, so he agrees that from now on she will help Yu take care of them. He thinks that when these half-elves grow up, they will add a significant strength to the tribe. He takes a look at the stats he got after mating with the queen. He gained a qualification boost which gives him plus 200 hydrogen phosphide, 30 strength and 30 defense. He wonders if his qualification has been unlocked to the highest level, since recently, all his acquired values have been converted straight into attributes instead of levels. It seems that from now on, all he has to do is mate with strong individuals and have them give birth. His current strength is enough to crush Loader, so after these elves give birth, he'll find an opportunity to deal with him. Half a month later we see an elf who just gave birth screaming to get the disgusting goblin she just birthed away from her, finding it terrifying. Tian asks Yu how many newborns they have so far. She responds with 30 to 40 by now. Suddenly they hear an elf screaming in pain, so they rush to the scene. Turns out it's Kasana giving birth. The queen begs him to save her since it's her first time giving birth and she seems on the brink of death. He goes in to help, so she asks him if he knows how to do this, to which he says he knows a bit. Kasana tries to refuse, not wanting his help, but he tells her to shut up since they are his children as well. Later, she successfully birthed 3 goblins, and Tian informed them that she's fine now. Yu compliments him for being amazing, but he says it's no big deal. They then hear an elf struggling and see 2 goblins trying to assault her. He stabs one of them from the back and says in anger that he told them to wait until they are fully rested and recovered before allowing them to breed again. Whoever disobeys will face death. He turns to the remaining goblin and orders that from now on, each elf will be given an extra portion of fruit. The queen looks at him in surprise and remarks that he is indeed different from other goblins. He responds by saying that this is what should be done. As long as they behave better, they will be treated better. He ran a simulation about capturing the elves and the results were that after he conquered the elves and impregnated all their females, they would birth stronger goblins than the average goblin. Seeing the tribe about to expand, he decided to seek revenge on the Holy Order, and after successfully infiltrating Bright Town, he located the whereabouts of the Blade Hero group. The system then gives him 3 options. The first is to take action himself to kill Loader and others with 50 points as reward. The second option is to lead the goblins and massacre Bright Town, plus 30 points. Or the third option, which is to wait and see. If he thinks the time isn't right yet, he should observe for a while longer, which gives 10 points. He wonders how they were able to find them so quickly according to the description. He thinks that although his current strength is almost equal to Loader's, his companions should not be underestimated. His current attributes should allow him to easily kill Loader, so he selects the first option. The result is that after he found an opportunity to attack Loader when he was alone, he chose to strike decisively and Loader was almost killed. However, at that moment, Loader's master, the Sword Saintess, appeared. She saves Loader and he dies tragically under her sword. After that, Loader and his group return to the capital and never be seen again. Seeing this result and only getting 30 points out of 100, Lin Tian is shocked that such a person as the Sword Saintess would appear in such a small place. And he didn't expect Loader and his group to leave Bright Town. Once they leave, it will be difficult to find them again. He curses, thinking that he needs to hurry up. He looks at Yu distributing food for a while till he gets an idea. He goes to Yu and tells her that he needs to go to the human territory for a few days, so he will leave the tribe in her hands since their warriors listen to her the most after him. The elf queen asks if he's crazy, since if he's discovered by humans in their territory, he will be hunted and killed. He tells her that he has a grudge and wants to seek revenge, to which she asks him to hold on and let her help him. She can cast a stealth spell on him, so he wouldn't be detected by them. He smirks, thinking that that was what he was waiting for her to say. He tells her that he didn't expect her to care about his safety, to which she responds that she's just afraid that if he dies, the other goblins will be even more cruel to them. Besides, her children are all here, so only if he returns safely can they be secure. He inwardly compliments her survival methods and then turns to leave. Later, Lin Tian successfully manages to infiltrate Bright Town, secretly monitoring the knights from the back alleys. He notices that the security has suddenly become tight and wonders if the Sword Saintess has already arrived. But he's been gathering information all day, and hasn't heard any news about her, so he finds it strange. He continues walking through the town when he sees a bunch of adventurers gathering at an adventurer team's ranking bulletin. He decides to check it out and sees that Loader is actually ranked first as part of the Blade Hero team. He thinks that he needs to hurry and find more clues, otherwise his revenge will fail. A while later, he hears a familiar voice, who is none other than Loader. He goes into the tavern and eavesdrops on their conversation. Some knight was boisterously recounting Loader and Ifreya's noble deeds during their adventures, saying how they saved him from a four-armed ape. And Ifreya laughs shyly, saying that he, the captain, is the amazing one, and there's no way she could have killed it alone. Another adventurer mocks them for bragging about something as small as a four-armed ape, to which the captain tells him to get lost. This gets the adventurer riled up, saying that he will beat them up. The bartender suddenly interjects, telling them that recently, the dragons on Dragon Island have been kidnapping livestock and eating people, so if they have the skills, they should go slay the dragons, not cause trouble in his establishment. Lin Tian gets surprised at the mention of dragons. The bartender continues by saying that if the dragons attack Bright Town and the capital doesn't send reinforcements in time, the adventurers in town won't be able to fend them off, causing the adventurers listening to tense up. Suddenly Loader interjects by saying that it's just a few dragons, what's there to be afraid of? He continues by saying that the Sword Saintess is already on her way here. She is master, and once she gets here, she will join forces with them to slay the dragons, and when everything is over they will return together to the capital. The adventurers get surprised by his announcement, some praising him, others thinking he's lying. Loader tells them that today, he will treat all of them to drinks as a way to celebrate the Sword Saintess's arrival and the success of slaying the dragons in advance. Tien stands up, thinking that if the dragons attack the town he must seize the opportunity. Loader sees him leaving and asks if he doesn't want to stay and have drinks with them, to which Tien refuses, saying there will be more opportunities in the future. Later, the whole town is celebrating the arrival of the Sword Saintess. We see her praying in the cathedral, when Loader suddenly comes in and informs her that the dragon has been lingering around these days and getting closer to them. She picks up her sword and turns to him, asking about the task she entrusted him with. He responds by saying that the 10 dragon-slaying crossbows have been made according to her instructions and are being deployed at various high points around the town. She tells him to deploy them well, otherwise, none of them will be of any help to her when the time comes, and it'll be a disgrace to her. Outside, the residents are still cheering for her. She tells the guards that this period is of great importance to them, so they should quickly disperse the crowd. During the dragon's assault, he grabs a resident and starts flying off. The Saintess informs them that it's a scout dragon. Once it shows up, it will definitely attract the dragon horde. She orders Loader to bring his companions and follow her to the wall. The scene then shifts to a goblin scout reporting that the dragon is here and many soldiers have manned the wall. He asks for further instructions, to which Lin Tian says to just stay here and enjoy the show, surrounded by many of his goblin subordinates. When the dragon horde finally attacked the village, one suddenly gets pierced by a bolt the Sword Saintess shot using the newly built crossbow, surprising Ifreya and Loader. She orders them to quickly go to the crossbows and get ready. So they quickly start loading the crossbows and start shooting the dragons down. But before they could get happy about their advantage, they notice a big shadow closing in on them. Hearing the loud roar, many soldiers start falling to the ground, clutching their heads in pain. In shock, they discover that it's the purple golden dragon mother. They try to shoot, but the crossbow doesn't even hurt her. The dragon charges a dragon breath and unleashes it toward the wall, making the adventurers run in panic. But before it could hit, the Sword Saintess says to leave the mother dragon to her and continues to defend and uses a sword technique called Sword Torrent that counters the dragon's breath. Lin Tian is surprised that she managed to hold off the dragon mother's attack, but thinks it's expected since although the dragon mother is abnormal with an overall strength of 2,900. The real monster is the Sword Saintess, who is a level higher and has an overall power of 4,000. He finds her strength too abnormal, but fortunately he's not the one facing her. She successfully injured the dragon mother, creating a hole in her wing. The dragon mother is slightly weaker but has the advantage of a higher HP, so the sword saintess won't be able to deal with her in a short time. So this is the perfect opportunity to take his revenge. He orders his goblins to proceed into the city as planned. One team will create a disturbance and the other will lie in ambush, to which they all agree. Still fighting, Loader finds these dragons hard to deal with, but is thankful that his master is around to help this time, happy that he is also a dragon slayer this time. Suddenly, someone started screaming that the goblins are attacking, which catches Loader and his team off guard. So they shout in anger no to joke around, since even goblins, no matter how dumb they are, wouldn't dare to appear here right now. But a sudden scream of a girl being chased by goblins catches their attention, leading Loader to curse loudly. He orders his comrades that since there aren't many dragons left, they could handle them while he and Freya will go deal with the goblins. Chasing after the goblins, they get suddenly ambushed from above and the sewers bellow. Loader trips and falls, surrounded by 3 well-equipped goblins brandishing their spears at him. While Freya got captured in a net, scream for Loader to help her, but he just curses, asking why so many of them are here. Seeing their situation, their companions try to rush to them, but get surrounded themselves by many goblins. Lin Tian approaches them from behind, prompting Loader to shout at them to be careful. They quickly turn around, but get their necks instantly sliced off before they could do anything, falling to ground, dead, which greatly shocks Loader and Freya, who watched this scene. Approaching them, he says that he didn't expect them to be caught so easily. Loader shouts in anger that he's going to kill them all, lowly goblins. But Tian calmly kicks him in the chin, telling him to look at the situation carefully before speaking. He then orders his men to take these 2 out of the city through the sewers, and the rest of them will go with him to the city wall to deal with the crossbowmen. Noticing the disturbance, the sword saintess wonders what's going on. How did the goblins even dare to launch a sneak attack at this time? The big mommy the mother dragon, says after using her demi-human transformation that it seems they're busy among themselves as well, before lunging at her to strike, calling her a filthy witch. The saintess calmly responds by saying, "Let's find out how much more of her dragon blood can spilt." She uses the sword technique Steel Gale to slash her from all sides, causing the dragon mother to scream in pain. While thinking inwardly that the dragon mother is almost dealt with and wondering if Loader has successfully dealt with those dragons and goblins. Down below, a huge explosion happened, catching her attention and making the dragon mother remark that these goblins really came at the right time, before transforming back and flying away, saying that she'll be back after recovering from her wounds, which made the saintess curse that she managed to escape, vowing to exterminate all dragons on Dragon Island once she's recovered. Going back to the town and killing some goblins, she asks about Loader's whereabouts, calling them useless fools for not even being able to deal with some goblins. A soldier reports to her that Loader and Freya have been captured by the goblins, making her question how that's even possible. The soldier tries to explain that these goblins are very unusual, their strength is comparable to a great race, and even Loader couldn't defeat them. She turns around saying that she will go slaughter all the goblin tribes in the enchanted forest now, but the woman, clearly afraid, grabs her hand and begs her to stay with them, asking what if the dragons or goblins come back, who will protect them. This prompted all the residents to start begging her in fear. This scene made her think that compared to the captured members of the hero's party, her duty is to protect these citizens. She tells Loader in her heart that if he wants to blame himself for being weak, since he couldn't even deal with the goblins. She has no choice but to ask the royal family for help first. Finally getting back to his village, Lin Tian is welcomed by his subordinates, followed by the chained-up Loader and Freya. After getting thrown to the side, Loader voices his surprise at the number of elves kept here, leading Freya to wonder if there might be a hero-tier goblin in this tribe. He asks if she's recovered a bit, to which she responds by telling him that the toxin is very potent, and will take some time for her sacred constitution to eliminate the effects. Tian suddenly interjects by saying that he didn't expect the poison to lose effect so soon and complimenting her recovery speed, which left them shocked by his sudden appearance. She asks in shock how he knows her name and what he wants to do, seeing him touch her thigh. He smirks and proceeds to dig his nails in her soft leg, making her scream in agony. Loader yells at him in anger to stop, but gets punched in the face by a goblin. Loader asks if he hasn't thought of the consequences of capturing them, saying that the sword Saintis is enough to kill his entire tribe with one strike. Tian calmly responds by telling him that the Saintis is his prey as well, but the time hasn't come yet. Besides, he's already sent someone to cover their tracks, so even if she wants to find this place, she won't be able to. He then orders the Goblin Berserker to take all the second-generation goblins to the forest to kill more monsters and bring them back. He thinks that this time, with such a big move, the humans won't let it slide, so they have to complete the evolution process before they find them. He kicks Loader in the chest while telling him to answer some of his questions, and if he doesn't cooperate, some parts of his body might go missing. Still stepping on him, he asks if he's fond of capturing goblins and torturing them. Loader curses, asking what nonsense he's spouting, to which Tian cuts off his ear, saying that his answer was too slow. He starts screaming in pain and cursing loudly, then says that everything they've done is for the sake of the human race and that it's their duty to defeat them. Tian chuckles at this response, saying that he thinks it's more about constantly elevating the status of his so-called heroes party, since it's much easier to kill the captured humans along with the monsters than to rescue them alive. He, who claims to be righteous, just how much of a blood debt has he acquired to complete his missions? Hearing to this point, they get frightened by how much he knows about them. He continues by saying that now the conversation is over and unlike them, he doesn't need to pretend to be righteous since he's inherently an evil monster. And now, this evil monster will teach them a lesson. Loader screams at him not to touch Freya, while she's begging for his help. But Tian continues doing his deed unperturbed and tells Freya that he is now returning her original words to her. The lesson has just begun, so she better hold on and let's see if her Loader enjoys watching what these goblins will do to her. Prompting the goblin horde to pounce on her. Even later, they kept taking turns doing her in, leaving her haggard. Loader tells her to hang on and she says that she's fine. Seeing this, the elf queen wonders if Lin Tian has a grudge against humans, to which her daughter responds that they have it worse than them, at least they have fruit to eat. Yu interjects by telling them that she heard him mention before that has a grudge against humans, so it must be true. Thinking of him, the queen says that he always keeps his word and never forgets a grudge. He's the most unique goblin she's ever seen. Then she started fantasizing about him with a blushing face, causing her daughter to think that she's taking a liking to him. A Goblin informs Lin Tian that the goblins who went to hunt earlier have returned, which surprised him, so he asked why they're back so soon. He then looked at them to check their stats and found that they had already broken through level 30 and evolved into a high-tier species, with their stats almost catching up to him. The leading goblin responds to him by saying that they wiped out all the nearby monsters, so they had to head to the west side of the forest, but they ran into several high-tier goblins slaughtering goblin tribes. Tian asks which tribe, so they tell him that it's the Bloodfang tribe and they're all high-tier goblins. Tian finds it interesting that they're all high-tier goblins and says that if they can capture their leader, they can create even stronger third-generation goblins, which would increase their chances of surviving the human extermination efforts. Hearing this, Loader laughs at him and says that he's foolish, dreaming when he's on the brink of death. That no matter how powerful the goblins are, they'll still be defeated by the knights. Tian tells him that he almost forgot about him since he's been so quiet, and then he sets his goblins on him, making him scream about their intentions. Touching him, the goblin remarks on his soft skin and then proceeds to do you know what while Freya lowers her head in silence. Several hours later, he fainted with his eyes rolled back. The goblins are celebrating, and Lin Tian is sandwiched by Yu and the elf queen. Yu asks her if they are attacking the Bloodfang tribe next, to which he confirms, saying that since they want to be the strongest, not only will they attack them but also capture their leader. And he even came up with a name for their tribe, which is the Tian Quang tribe. The goblins start cheering upon hearing this. Yu voices her worries that they are too strong, but Tian tells her not to worry since he's confident and he still has a trump card he hasn't used. The next day, he went to scout their strength in the demonic forest. He spies on them and sees that they are indeed high tier but should be manageable, so he continues to search until he sees two goblins shivering, seemingly scared of something. So he deduces that their leader is coming, but when he sees their leader he discovers that he's actually a hero-class goblin at level 50 and overall power of 900. He doesn't find him too powerful, since a dozen or so of his subordinates should be able to handle him, but capturing him alive would be difficult. And because of his size, poison wouldn't be too effective. He thinks it would be great if he could use the imprisonment spell Freya used on him on this guy. So he decides to go see her. Back at the village, a goblin reports to him that they completed his orders according to his instructions but that human is dying. He tells him that he did well and walks over to Freya, who is begging to be killed, so she can atone for her sins in the presence of her lord. He greets and starts wiping her body gently, to which she finds it warm, but when she opens her eyes and sees him, she jumps back in terror, telling him to stay away from her. Seeing her talk crazy, he slaps her face to calm her down, then hugs her gently while telling her that her punishment is over. She started tearing up and asking if it's true, to which he confirms, saying that he always keeps his word, but the prerequisite is that she has to choose her faith. She gets confused, so he explains that it's about choosing to believe in God or choose to trust him, to become his pet and be spared from the daily torment. She starts licking his fingers like a good little doggy, so he praises her. He tells her that from now on, he is her master and he will call her little bitch, to which she barks and calls him master with a subservient look. He picks her up and starts bathing her gently in the nearby well. Seeing his care and affection, she says that she is willing to give him everything. He smirks and asks to see how she uses Holy Light Cage. Hearing this, she asks what that is. Later, after showing her what he wanted to see from a book he got from the elves, she casts the technique summoning a prison of light and asks if this is it. He says yes and compliments her. Later, while walking by the prison cells, Loder sees them and calls to Freya to quickly kill that goblin and restore his body. Lin Tian responds to him by telling him that she's already willingly submitted to him, to which Loder refuses to believe, saying that there's no way the daughter of the leader of the Holy Order would be tamed by a goblin. So Tian turns to her and says to tell whether it is true or not. She goes down and starts acting like a pet and says that yes, she did everything voluntarily, shocking Loder to no end. He then laughs creepily, saying that his actions will lead to the extinction of goblins from this world and that the only purpose of his existence is to be slaughtered by humans, since the Holy Church will wipe them out. This surprised Tian, not expecting her to have such an identity. And as a reward for such important information, he orders his Ricardo-looking goblins to not let him rest for 3 days. Then, taking Freya with him, he goes off to take down the Bloodfang tribe. At the Bloodfang's village, they are preparing to attack the southern tribes, expecting to capture the elves and have fun with them. Suddenly someone reports to him that a goblin barged into the tribe looking for him, which confused him, so he asked to be sure if it's a low-level goblin, but before they continue, Lin Tian shows up, telling him that he knows that he's a hero-level goblin with intelligence close humans, which is why he's here to talk to him. The leader asks if he's a mutant, to which Tian replies that he's just slightly smarter than a normal goblin. He then introduces himself as the leader of the southern tribe and announces that he wants their leader's head. The rest of them have 2 choices, either submit to him or die here. The goblin hero gets angry, calls him a fool and grabs his head with his hand. He pulls him up, saying that he did expect him to come to him on his own. After he kills them all, the elves and humans will be his. Seeing that it is useless to talk further, he tells him that if he didn't want to capture him alive, no more words needed. He cuts off his hand and jumps back suddenly, causing the leader to shout at them to kill him. They all pounce on him, ready to avenge their boss, but Tian signals his subordinates to show up from their stealth and start slaughtering their opponents. Seeing the many goblin warriors, he discovers that this was his plan all along. He just negotiated with them to make them lower their guard, and with their attention all on him, his subordinates infiltrated easily. He decides to run away, thinking that they are no match for him. If he wants to escape, no one can stop him, but even so he chooses to kill Tian before escaping. Tian stands calmly and calls to Freya, to which she quickly casts the holy light prison, stopping him in his tracks. He curses, seeing that it's a light-type magic, and he knows that goblins can't use light magic. That's when he sees Freya acting like a good pet. Tian pats her head and tells her that after turning dark, she's gotten even stronger, so he tells her to go back and get her reward. Chained up, the goblin hero calls him scum. Tian responds calmly by telling him to obediently become his heroic breeding goblin. And that is all. Later, back in the tribe, the goblin hero is chained up to a rock, bloodied and bruised. Lin Tian stands in front of him, calmly cleaning his dagger that's dripping with blood and saying that subduing him really took a lot of effort, but finally, all the busy work is done and now there's no longer any threat. In the cell behind him, Loader watches in terror while wondering in horror how he managed to capture a hero seed, calling Lin Tian a beast. Tian turns to the elf queen and Yu and tells Yu that the test of artificial insemination can be done by the other goblins, so she just needs to keep an eye on them, to which she readily agrees. He then tosses Freya to her, saying that he'll leave her to Yu, and orders Freya to be prepared and listen well. After washing his hands with the water Leah, the elf queen brought him, he tells her to help him get dressed later. He needs to go meet a friend. She exclaims in surprise about this friend, to which Tian grins devilishly, saying yes, a very important friend. Standing on the beach in front of some buffalo carcasses, Lin Tian says that judging by Loader's arrogance, human reinforcements will likely arrive at Bright Town soon. With their current strength, they could still face off against the knights, but if they encounter the sword Saintess, it would mean a certain death. Growing the hero seed goblins still needs time, so he must find an ally to stall the sword Saintess. It's time to go meet the purple gold dragon mother. He thinks inwardly that Dragon Island is at least 100 kilometers away. So the quickest way to reach Dragon Island is to summon a dragon here. With such a strong scent of blood, he thinks he should be able to lure a flying dragon soon. A while later, a dragon could be seen flying in his direction, and Tian thinks as expected. They caught the scent of blood and arrived while hiding inside the belly of one of the buffaloes. The dragon quickly picks up the tied-up carcasses and flies back, making Tian rejoice in his success. After reaching the island, the dragon drops the bodies inside a cave and leaves. Tian climbs out of the belly of the beast and looks around him, thinking as expected, these dragons aren't hunting just for themselves. So now all that's left is to find the dragon mother and... But before he could finish his thought, a giant purple dragon rises behind him, saying that there's something strange mixed in with food. After looking closer, she says that she recognizes him. He's the goblin leader that attacked Bright Town that day, and asks what is he sneaking into her territory for, and threatens to eat him. Lin Tian raises his hand, asking her to wait and saying that he's here this time to discuss cooperation. Taking on her humanoid form, she says how peculiar. A mere goblin wants to negotiate with her, but since he's helped her before, she'll listen. If he can satisfy her, she might choose not to eat him. He tells her that she seeks revenge on the sword Saintess, doesn't she? So how about they join forces, and consider it a favor from last time she helped him escape during the raid. She responds with what? He, a lowly creature, is targeting the sword Saintess, and then says that he piqued her interest a little. So she asks how he plans to deal with the sword Saintess, calling her a wretch. Tian says it's simple, he just needs her to send her dragon soldiers to occasionally harass Bright Town. She asks what about him? What can a bunch of mere goblins do, and how dare he target that crazy woman? She grabs his shoulder and leans closer, asking what's his plan. She then lifts his chin with her fingers and he responds that to deal with someone like the Sword Saintess, direct confrontation won't work. They have to attack her mind. Killing her spirit is the best way to defeat her. The Dragon Queen laughs and says that using goblins as tools to kill without sacrificing her own forces is perfectly in line with her desire. He asks if they should consider their deal sealed then, to which she says naturally, but who would have thought a goblin could be so clever? The more she looks at him, the more she likes him. Licking her lips, she asks how about she give him a little reward. Tian thinks that female dragons in their breeding season are really something. But then she says that unfortunately his small body is really not worthy of her attention, so in that case she'll give him some other reward first, and then she starts to wonder which one should she choose. Back in the Tien Quang tribe, Loder could be seen tied to a cross. He wonders why the knights haven't come to save him yet since it's been so long, and if he stays here any longer he's gonna break apart, so he must escape. But how could he do that with goblins everywhere? He then thinks that since goblins are short, if he could manage to get to a higher place. He then sees a wyvern flying his way and starts panicking. He starts shouting at the goblins to let him down, saying that he doesn't want to be burnt alive by dragon fire. The wyvern, the goblins and elves go into an uproar, but then the elf queen notices something and tells them to wait and look, saying that there seems to be someone on the dragon. The wyvern lands in the midst of the goblins, and Lin Tian descends from his back saying that he's back, taking everyone by surprise. He pets the dragon and tells it to rest here well and not wander around. The goblins start shouting "Long live the boss," saying that he's so cool, and Yu joyfully comes to his side. Loder could be seen with cold sweat trickling down his face, wondering if Lin Tian is really a goblin, and prays for the Night Order to hurry and save him. Meanwhile, in Bright Town, the Royal Night Order has finally arrived. They rode their majestic horses imposingly until they reached the town square, where they kneel down in front of the Sword Saintess. Seeing this, she orders, saying that time is running out, no need for formalities, and quickly prepare the rescue plan. Back in the village, Lin Tian uses his ability to simulate the future. The current scenario is nurturing the third generation of goblins, which says that by ambushing Bright Town and the Bloodfang tribe he has achieved remarkable results. He leads Goblin Yu and Freya to grind levels in the Enchanted Forest to counter the Sword Saintess and the human royal family. After 1 month he will achieve level 50, Yu level 60, and Freya will reach level 45. It then presents him with 3 options. The first, to continue grinding in the forest, which gives 1 score. Second, to find a way to capture prisoners and cultivate more goblins with a plus 10 score. And finally third, to speed up the leveling process and jump directly to 1 month later with a plus 20 score. Seeing the third option, Tian thinks that this option's appearance means there won't be an ambush from the Saintess during this time, so he decides to skip this period and clicks on the third option. Time starts to accelerate and he gets a notification saying that this enchanted forest can no longer provide sufficient experience. He gets awarded 20 life points and the simulation ends. He then wakes up 1 month later and wonders if this is what it feels like to skip time, finding the feeling strange. He gets a notification congratulating him on reaching level 50 with an overall strength of 1000. Seeing this, he thinks the attributes increased quite a bit, but the overall strength hasn't grown that much and wonders why that could be. Suddenly, Yu barges in shouting that something happened. Many newborn goblins are stillborn. This news shocked Tian, so he rushes with Yu to check the scene. He sees the elf women mourning the dead babies. He asks if something went wrong and how could this happen. The elf queen tells him that she doesn't know what happened. Now only 3 are still alive from this generation and they're still very weak. Loder starts maniacally laughing and asks if they really thought they could breed strong offsprings, calling them foolish goblins. Tian asks calmly that he seems to know the reason, to which Loder laughs and says that the higher the rank of the goblins, the harder it is for their offsprings to survive. Did they really think they could rule the world through reproduction? Tian says that he sees and should properly thank him for this information, so he tells the berserker goblin that Loder is his from now on. but he shouldn't kill him while playing. The berserker laughs and thanks him, while Loader shouts that he's ruthless and that even if he turns into a ghost, he won't let him off. Departing the scene, Tian thinks that it's too late to nurture new hero species now, but right now, they desperately need a large number of hero goblins, otherwise, facing the sword Saintess and her forces would be very difficult. He wonders if there's any way to upgrade the goblins. The dragon lands behind him, its eyes glowing red, and nudges him with her giant head. He wonders what's going on with her and starts petting her. He thinks inwardly that a female dragon going into heat and transforming into a demi-human? A special case, could this special case be? The dragon suddenly starts transforming and turns into a girl with her face flushed red with excitement, shocking Tian and making him think that this is a special case indeed, and wonders if this is the convenience the dragon mother deliberately left for him. The dragon girl jumps at him and pins him down. She then licks her lips and starts releasing the heat, if you know what I mean. After finishing, he gets a notification congratulating him on getting a promotion. A bit later, Tian could barely walk. Leaning on a tree for support, he curses, saying that it's just one dragon, but so fierce and ferocious. However, thanks to her he managed to evolve into a hero class. She clearly told him that he could evolve if he swallowed her dragon blood, but she still did this to him. She suddenly pops up behind him, telling him not to leave and they should continue. Shivering, he points at his subordinates and tells her to finish her task first by giving them her dragon blood, and then they could continue. She rushes at the goblins, causing them to panic and ask Tian what's going on. Later that night, the goblins are celebrating their evolution after taking the dragon blood. Tian sits in the back, the dragon sleeping behind him. He looks at his hand and thinks that it is indeed worthy of being called the legendary dragon race. Not only him, but everyone else also evolved into hero class. However, the overall strength right now is a bit low. It's time to add some equipment. He opens the system shop and starts browsing while thinking that as the leader of a hero class clan, how can he maintain his prestige without some strength? With 180 credits, he thinks that it should be enough to exchange some high quality and useful equipment. He sees an elemental crossbow. It's light, attacks far and can absorb elements. He then sees Blade Stealer skill, which allows him to catch a weapon with his bare hands 3 times and costs 80 points. He thinks that this one is cheaper, but it's a rule-based one. It can target the sword Saintess and at worst save his life, so he decides to take these 2. Taking out his newly bought crossbow, he wonders how useful it will be, and thinks that he needs to find a test subject. Hearing this, Loader starts sweating, and that is when Tian turns to him saying that he's a great option. Loader asks what he's going to do in a shaky voice. And just like that, Loader became the first one to experience how powerful Lin Tian was. Meanwhile, in the Enchanted Forest, a team of adventurers that joined the rescue squad are searching for Tian's tribe. The archer of the group says that these low-class monsters are so boring. She doesn't understand what's there to fight over, and that they should have stayed with the Saintess to guard the town and slay the dragons. The vanguard of the group responds by saying that the dragon mother has been harassing the town quite frequently, so the Saintess can't be bothered dealing with the goblins. That's why she left this opportunity for them, calling this mission a low-hanging fruit. He tells them to stay sharp and not waste this opportunity. The mage suddenly notices a disturbance and notifies the captain. What they see is a giant spider monster, and they quickly take position to attack. The archer quickly shoots an arrow that hits the spider in the head. She then comforts the mage, who's afraid of spiders, by saying confidently that it's just a class 3 bug. What's there to scream about? The leader tells that there's something else, and they see a giant hero class goblin. Thinking that he's the leader, they rejoice that they found him so soon, thinking of all the fame that they would get after defeating him. The leader shouts for the crusade to begin and asks the archers to cover him. The heavy warrior tells him that there's no rush, and since he killed quite a few goblins along the way, he should give him the opportunity to take credit this time. He continues persuading him by saying that he killed countless goblins before, but never a hero class 1. The leader finally agrees, saying that since he's on the field now, The battle should be over soon, to which the heavy warrior says to count on him. He takes a stance and energy starts swirling around him, telling them to watch how he one-shot this guy. He uses intermediate combat skill, Raging Vortex Spear, and throws his lance with force at the goblin, shouting for him to die. But they get shocked seeing that it didn't have any effect on the goblin, who simply caught it with his hand. The goblin then takes a throwing stance and the leader shouts for the tank to activate his shield. He throws the lance back at them and the shield starts to crack. The leader curses, saying that he can't believe he has such strength. He almost broke the shield with just brute force. The archer argues that since it's a power type, they could just stay away and attack from long range, saying that her bow and arrow aren't just for show. But she suddenly gets impaled from behind by a goblin assassin, shocking her to her core. The three left huddle together and the leader curses, yelling that they were ambushed. There's an assassin and ordering them to stay in formation and surround the long-range troops quickly. Shivering in terror, the mage tells the captain to look in her direction. When he does, he gets shocked seeing the number of terrifying goblins surrounding them. Shouts and screams then rang out in the enchanted forest and the party was taken care of in no time. Grabbing the mage, one of the goblins says she's his, but the other goblin says these are all the tribe's spoils of war. The boss said that they have to capture all the humans they meet. They lost one because he was fooling around, and for this, he will get nothing. The former asks why. They killed so many humans and they are strong enough now, so from now on they control their own spoils of war. Several goblins agree, saying that right now they're the strongest and the tribe should listen to them. Calling him Big Brother, they say that since he's the strongest they will listen to him. The goblin looks at his sword and contemplates. Then he says to let's bring them back first. Back at the village, they get welcomed uproariously by the other goblins. The elf queen, standing beside Tian and Yu, asks if he's still sure that he can control them, to which Tian doesn't respond. Grabbing the leader by the neck, Goblin Tian shouts that he is his loot and he's gonna eat him. Lin Tian approaches him and orders him to put him down since he has the information that he needs. Goblin Tian looks at him menacingly and then says that if he wants him, he should give him his women in exchange. This attitude shocked the ladies, but Lin Tian calmly lifts his hand to stop them and asks the goblin if he has any idea what he's saying, telling him that he is their leader. Goblin Tian turns to Goblin Kwong and says that Kwong is stronger than him, so they plan on following him from now on. Looking at Goblin Kwong, who used to be Goblin Berserker, Lin Tian says so he is the mastermind. Tian continues by telling Kwong that he'll give him a chance, capture Goblin Tian for him and he'll forgive him, which made Goblin Tian jeer, saying that Goblin Kwong won't listen to him, he's their new boss, they'll kill him today and rule the tribe themselves. But he suddenly gets grabbed by his head by Goblin Kwong, which made Goblin Tian sweat profusely. Kwong then decisively crushed his head, shocking the onlookers. The rest of the hero-class goblins ask why, but he ignores them and tells Tian that after leveling up, he seems to understand many things. Unlike these arrogant idiots, he respects him. However, he also respects absolute strength. Calling him father, he says that he became the leader after defeating the old leader. Now, he would like to try. He is level 50 with an overall strength of 1200. Tian says that he sees, this kid dared to challenge him when his comprehensive strength reached 1200. He's happy to see him grow, but with energy exploding around him asks if he's sure he wants to challenge him? Facing off against each other, the goblin warriors cheer for Kwong to kill Tian and steal his women, which made Tian comment that he seems to have quite a few followers. But before they start, he wants to confirm again. Hero-class goblins, if they want to continue following him, they should stand over here immediately, otherwise, they'll all be killed. Seeing this, the leader of the human squad says that he didn't expect that the leader of this group of hero-class goblins would be such an inconspicuous guy. He thinks that they're lucky that they got caught during them having internal issues, which gives them a good chance to escape. The difference in strength between the two sides is too great, even if they can use magic, it will be of no use. When the old leader dies, they'll find a way to escape. Seeing many goblins on his side, Tian comments that he seems to be the better leader, since only a few were willing to follow Kwang, to which Kwang says that he is different from them, he merely chooses to pursue strength. He charges at Tian and strikes with his sword, to which Tian efficiently dodges, which surprised the human leader by his speed. Tian takes his crossbow and shoots an elemental fire arrow which rushes towards Kwang. Seeing this, Kwang thinks that it's a weapon that he's never seen before and it's so fast. So since he can't dodge it, he'll just have to tank it. Tian compliments his good endurance for breaking the fireball and charging through. Kwang goes on the attack again, but Tian scoffs with a smirk. An explosion erupts when the strike landed, which greatly shocked all the onlookers, including Loader and Tian's women. What they saw was Tian calmly catching Kwang's giant sword mid-strike. Kwang himself gets shocked, saying that this is impossible. Tian calmly tells him that it was a good strike. He surprised him. Unfortunately for him though, is that his opponent is Lin Tian, who used the skill he purchased earlier. He then shoots Kwang from point-blank range. He asks Kwang if he wants to continue, to which Kwang refuses, kneeling and saying that he accepts the death penalty. Seeing this, Tian wonders where he learned this from and thinks that he's quite stubborn. The rest of the traders start kneeling and begging for their lives, swearing not to do this again. Seeing this, he calls them a bunch of spineless trash, but they still continue to beg for forgiveness. Healing Kwang with Ifreya's magic, he orders him to rise. He tells him that he has courage, and as long as he remains loyal to him, he won't kill him. Kwang asks if that's true in disbelief, to which Tian confirms but adds that he can't forgive these fellows, so he orders Kwang to kill them all. Kwang thanks him for sparing his life and faces the traitors, saying that from today onwards, he is willing to follow Tian forever and to leave these guys to him. After killing the traitors, Tian turns to the young goblins and tells them to devour these rebellious goblins, it'll make them stronger. All the goblins start to cheer for Tian, promising to stay loyal to him. The human squad leader asks Loader in horror who on earth did he provoke, saying he is no normal mutated goblin, he's a monster that will shake the whole empire. Tian approaches them and tells Loader that he's sorry for making him miss out on that good show. However, did he really expect these trash to save him, calling him naive? Gritting his teeth, he says that it's all that bitch-ass Sword Saintess's fault, all she does is hide in the town. He starts laughing crazily, calling his rescue squad trash. The human squad leader glares at Tian, saying that they underestimated him, but he shouldn't be so arrogant. Once the Sword Saintess takes care of the purple gold dragon mother, she'll bring all other royal knights to kill them all. Tian squats in front of him while laughing softly, asking if he really thought that the dragons are attacking Bright Town on their own. But he feels relieved after hearing what he said. Looks like it's going well for the dragon mother too. Realizing the situation, the leader says that it turns out the entire Knight's Order and Bright Town were played by them. He tells Tian that he could kill him but not insult him, since he already got the information that he wanted, he should just kill him already. If he's going to have the same fate as Loader, he'd rather die, so he begs Tian to just let him have it. After contemplating for a while, Tian finally agrees to accept his request. Meanwhile, the Sword Saintess suddenly gets woken up by a shouting knight yelling her name. She rises and asks why is he so flustered, didn't they repel the dragons? Or could it be that the knights have returned? The knight says yes, but he hesitates to continue, so she asks but what, and to tell her immediately. He says that they were all annihilated, only one person returned. She gets shocked by this news and asks him to repeat himself, not believing what she just heard. Seeing the condition of the warrior from the rescue squad, the nun informs her that he's badly injured, healing potions won't help him anymore. The Sword Saintess asks him how did he get injured so badly and what about all the other knights. He responds with difficulty by saying that they met a group of hero-class goblins, and begs her to go and save the rest of them. But she should be careful, They're quite extraordinary. After finishing his words, he faints, so the nun rushes to him asking him to stay strong. The mage behind the saintess asks in disbelief, how did a goblin do this? The other knight turns and says, so what if they're hero class? They'll go destroy those low-level beasts. But the saintess tells him to hold it, saying that the dragons are attacking more and more frequently. If they leave, they can attack easily. Moreover, they could easily get ambushed by the goblins. She can't defeat them alone. She orders him to send more support over to protect Bright Town, and when it's time, she'll slaughter those goblins and the purple gold dragon mother with her own hands. The knight tries to argue about the safety of the Silver Blade team, so the mage interjects, asking him if he thinks they have any chance of survival. Someone suddenly barges in, saying that there's no need to rescue them. Those who are boastful die first. It makes sense if Silver Blade got too cocky and died. This is Kazimov, captain of the Reaper Knights team. He asks the saintess to let him personally rescue and clear out the goblins. She tells him that a whole team got wiped out and he wants to go alone. Removing his mask, he says that he survived 4 Titan warriors alone previously, so even if it's against a group of hero-class goblins, there's no chance they can harm him, so they should just sit and wait for the good news. Back in the Tien Quang tribe, Tien launches the simulation ability again, with the current scenario being to defend against the human race. It tells him that successfully led the goblins and dragon to victory and constructed a hero-class clan. He destroyed unloyal subjects and established his authority. He gains greater respect from both goblins and dragons. However, under the order of the Sword Saintess, Kazimov, also known as the Grim Reaper, snuck into his clan and killed many. Although he restrained him eventually, his clan suffers from great losses. Seeing this, Tien thinks that he dares to counterattack as a one-man army. How naive. But could one man really inflict that much damage to the clan? He sees the 3 usual options. First, migrate to avoid the attack. Second, to ambush Kazimov. And third, attack first and kill Kazimov. Tien thinks that instead of waiting for him to attack, if they attack first, there will be the least losses. And so, the mission starts, which is to fight Kazimov to the death with a time limit of 3 days. Thinking that this guy doesn't seem to be a nobody, before attacking, he'll have to figure out who he is first. Confronting Loader about this, he starts laughing uproariously, saying finally someone who knows what they're doing. He tells them that they are dead meat. He even fought Titan warriors before. Tien says that he seems to trust this guy a lot and asks what are Titan warriors, to which Loader says that they are soldiers mutated with Titan genes from enemy country. They can destroy class 5 beasts with their bare hands. He continues laughing and jeering, saying that it's so over for all of them. Tien responds calmly that it seems like Kazimov got something after all, and Loader tells him to just wait to get his ass whipped. Tien thinks that it's best to be careful, so he should send someone to get intel. Meanwhile, Kazimov seems to be riding his horse through the enchanted forest. He thinks inwardly that there isn't a single beast in this whole forest, finding this way too unusual. He finally reaches the area where the last battle took place and finds the remains of the Silver Blade team. He calls them a group of trash inwardly. He laughs, saying that the fresh smell of blood is quite eerie and wonders if he could enjoy himself this time. He suddenly hears someone crying and begging for help. He tries to figure out where the sound is coming from and then rushes his horse in a certain direction. When he reached his destination, he asks who she is. When she turns, he gets shocked and she asks him to save her. He exclaims in surprise that she's somehow not dead and then asks about Loader. She tells him that she escaped from the Goblin tribe and that Loader is dead. He says that in that case she should tell him where the tribe is at. She points in a certain direction and says that it's over there, not too far from here, but they're very scary. He scoffs and asks if that's so. He then spurs his horse in that direction, leaving her behind. She shouts for him to at least bring her to safety, and he tells her to go back herself that way and not bother him. He's business to do. Kazimov has the class Solo Knight and has a class skill of when alone. He receives a 30% elemental buff, For every enemy he slays, he receives a 20% buff. There's no limit to the stacking, and effect lasts until the end of the battle. This cheat ability is what gives him confidence, and with Loader really being dead, he thinks that that's good news for him, since no one can stop him from activating his solo knight skill. If he attacks first and stack up his buffs, what can they do, even if they are hero class? On his way, his horse suddenly gets caught in a trap and trips, throwing him off. He expertly lands and wonders if it's an ambush. He sees Freya approaching him with her staff, so he asks why she hasn't left yet. He suddenly attacks him with Holy Light Strike, catching him by surprise. He asks in pain what she's doing, and she responds that her master told her to kill him. She uses Holy Light Blast to attack him again, but this time he uses his ability, Soul Reaper, to appear behind her and grab her by the neck. Calling her a bitch, he asks what spell she's under to dare to attack him. Licking her creepily, he says that if that's so, he won't hold back either. He continues by saying that he doesn't only like killing monsters, he'd quite like to slice off her skin too, and this is a good chance to stack his buff. Grabbing the sword that he was holding and appearing behind him, Tian comments that it's no wonder he came alone. His class skill and equipments are both hard to deal with. Seeing his appearance, Freya gets overjoyed. Inspecting the sword, Tian sees that it has a skill called Death Reaping. High attack speed, AoE effect increases critical damage by 90%. Tian tells him that if he successfully ambushed them and stacked his buff, his tribe would have suffered great losses. Kazimov is still shocked at how Tian managed to instantly steal his weapon. Freya rushes to his side calling him master, and Kazimov asks if he's the one who asked her to attack him. He curses at her for selling herself to a goblin as a slave to survive. Patting her head, Tian responds with "So what, she's a good dog." Him, however, disappointed him. He thought he was strong, but turns out he's just some creep who likes to assassinate. Kazimov says that although he doesn't know how he gathered intel about him, but against them lowly goblins, even without his weapon or buff skill, he will still send him to hell. He then charges at Tian to attack, but suddenly stops when he sees a bunch of hero-class goblins and a dragon behind Tian. Tian tells him that he would like to see who goes to hell first, and the dragon, as if on cue, uses her dragon's breath to incinerate him, where he shouts in pain, being burnt alive. Going back to the tribe, he is welcomed by his minions. He goes straight to Loader and tosses the burnt body of Kazimov in front of him, asking if this is his so-called all-powerful Grim Reaper, saying what a pity, after all, overestimating oneself only leads to death by his hands. Loader, slowly losing his sanity, says another one down, another one dead. He calls the sword Saintess a despicable witch, since sending people to protect the small fry in Bright Town has only led them becoming fodder for goblin leveling up. He wonders what kind of lousy strategy is that, and says that he even suspects that she's actually in league with him. Tian then takes the body and drops it in front of the goblins, thinking that next, they need to prioritize cultivating rare goblin types, and those corpses provide prime nutrients, so they must be fully utilized. Turning to a goblin called Gobshin, he tells him that this prey is his and to share the leftovers with the others, to which the latter thanks him profusely. Evolving into a rare type requires innate talent and genes. Gobshin has been chosen for testing because he's the one with the most potential. He thinks that he's both hypocritical and sadistic, perfect qualities for nurturing rare types. He's already looking forward to the existence of these rare beings. As for the sword Saintess, he checked with the system before. She only commands 3 knight squads. The Silver Blade squad has already fallen at his hands. Once the news of Kazimov's defeat spreads, it will crush the Saintess's morale. She'll definitely make a move to turn the situation around. So now is the best time to use the simulation system to probe the future. After finishing the simulation, his eyes turn red from anger, thinking that she, the sword Saintess, is truly a greedy saint. But it seems that in this game, he's the one who will win in the end. He turns to Gobkwang and orders him to gather all the goblins at once, saying that tomorrow he's leading them all to accomplish something big. They kneel and accept his command. He looks menacing, thinking that this time, it's his turn to eradicate them. Meanwhile, on the Saintess's side, she asks the knight reporting where was this body discovered. The knight says that it was found outside the city. The mage panics, saying in just one day, and the other knight commander says how could those lowly beasts have killed Kazimov. The Saintess says that their repeated failures in eradicating the goblins, and the frequent harassment by dragons, cannot be mere coincidences. This must be a scheme between those vile dragons and the goblins. Using Brighttown civilians as leverage, they aim to trap them here. They cannot afford to remain passive any longer. She orders the Battle Roar squad to head to the capital for reinforcements at once. On their way, one of the knights tells his captain that even if they rush to the capital on war horses, the fastest round trip would still take 4 days. If they all leave, what about the city's defense? He continues saying that he's fast on his feet, they should let him go alone to the capital for reinforcements, and all of them should stay to defend the town. The mage tells him that he doesn't understand the Saintess's plan. If they encounter a goblin ambush, at least someone can escape to report and bring back more help. With the Saintess's strength, defeating goblins or dragons outside the city wouldn't be a problem. The issue is that now even goblins and dragons are beyond what the Night Squad can handle. The Saintess wouldn't risk leaving the town, fearing one of these factions might launch a sneak attack on Brighttown. The Knight leader confirms, saying that the Saintess's plan is to protect both the Battle Roar squad and Brighttown by breaking out and seeking reinforcements, so they must break through quickly. The other knight then nods in understanding. The leader suddenly tells them to halt, and they see that the bridge has been destroyed. The mage says that the bridge was deliberately destroyed so they should detour, to which the captain says no they can't. This is likely a ploy to make them take a detour and set an ambush halfway. If the bridge is destroyed they surely won't come this way again, so this place is the safest. He orders his men to cut down some trees and rebuild the bridge, determined to cross by nightfall. They finish the repairs at dusk, and quickly rush to cross since they can't waste any time. The mage notices something strange and wonders why did it suddenly get dark. Looking above, they see a dragon hovering on top of them. And then they notice Tian riding on top of the dragon. This confirms their suspicion that the dragons and goblins are in league with each other. Tian laughs, saying that they all really work fast, but instead of taking the detour, they built a bridge here. He asks if they were worried that he'd ambush them on the other side. The captain says so it was him who destroyed the bridge and that he'll kill him himself. But before he could do anything, the dragon uses her dragon breath to destroy the bridge. Seeing this, they start to run back in hopes of reaching the other side before the bridge collapses. They manage to cross, but the bridge is destroyed, making the captain curse the goblins and vowing to capture and torture Lin Tian to death. The warrior in the foreground stands resolute, watching the incoming threat with a sense of determination, as the dragon's menacing form approaches the group surrounded by enemies wielding weapons, clearly outnumbering the group. One of the warriors expresses alarm at their predicament, while another, a figure in a pointed hat, remarks in shock about the arrival of even more powerful foes, possibly hinting at the dragon seen earlier. The woman, looking determined yet anxious, warns the group leader about the impending threat of the dragon, telling it would be impossible to achieve victory. The leader, however, sees this as an opportunity, rallying his team with confidence, insisting that if they hold their ground, this could be their chance to shine and turn the tide of battle. The leader urgently directs his comrade to hold off the enemy forces, instructing another to break through and deliver a message, while the other warrior acknowledges with determination. The leader, laughing boldly, charges into a group of enemies, swinging his weapon with force. He taunts the creatures for gathering together, displaying confidence amidst the fierce battle. He charges fiercely into the fray, shield raised and axe swinging, striking down the surrounding enemies with unstoppable force. His powerful attack creates a path through the chaos. Two goblins exchange confident remarks, believing that once their Saintess arrives, they'll easily defeat the intruders. The woman watches a group of goblins approaching, alarmed by their overwhelming numbers. She calls out to the leader, sensing that something is wrong with their current situation. Two menacing goblins glare with sinister expressions, Realizing something about the situation, one of them suggests that the attack wasn't a simple ambush, but a deliberate strategy by their opponents. The woman and her armored ally look up in shock as the dragon looms ominously above them, casting a dark shadow. She realizes that this terrifying appearance is all part of their enemy's calculated plan. Lin Tian stands amidst the flames, arms crossed with a smug expression, revealing that the dragon was merely a ruse to lure out their enemy's forces. The armored warrior lets out a powerful battle cry, gripping his weapon tightly as he prepares to confront the impending threat. The leader commands his team to bring down the dragon rider, emphasizing the urgency as their town has already fallen. His allies respond with determination, rallying to hold their ground until the Saintess arrives. A fierce clash unfolds as the armored warrior and a powerful enemy swing their weapons at each other amidst the flames. Both combatants are fully committed. The armored warrior and his formidable foe clash fiercely on a rocky incline, their weapons colliding with explosive force. The armored warrior, with a determined glare visible through his helmet, acknowledges the surprising strength of his opponent. From a distance, Lin Tian observes the chaotic battlefield where the warrior confronts his enemies. Noting the distinct sword held by his opponent, Lin Tian smirks with a smug expression. He finds his opponent unworthy or unimpressive. He raises his hand, casting a spell as he warns his opponents that their time is limited. Lin Tian, surrounded by flames, commands his forces to eliminate the knights before the Saintess arrives. Amidst a burning battlefield, the knights stand surrounded by a horde of enemies, with fallen comrades around them. A powerful gust throws the armored warrior off balance as he exclaims in distress about the overwhelming force. One goblin creature looms over a fallen warrior, taunting him as more enemies approach in the background. The armored warrior takes a powerful blow to the head, his helmet cracking under the impact. One goblin with a massive weapon looms over the battlefield. Lin Tian warns that they are running out of time. He calmly observes as a goblin overpowers a fallen body, urging swift action to complete their task before the Saintess arrives. The goblin, with a menacing expression, clutches a weakened body, expressing gratitude to his superior Tian for the meal. The scene shifts to a peaceful landscape of lush green forests and mountains stretches under a clear sky. The Saintess stands at the forefront, her commanding presence complemented by a group of armored soldiers behind her. The Saintess face shock and concern as she questions whether they've arrived too late. She and her troops stand at the edge of a forest, with a soldier calling out to her. A warrior, visibly grief-stricken, kneels beside a fallen comrade's skeleton, vowing revenge. The Saintess looks down solemnly, noting the absence of even bodies on the battlefield. The Saintess, surrounded by her soldiers, questions if the Dragon Clan collaborated with Goblin once again. The warrior, with a look of urgency, exclaims that among the goblins, there is one capable of riding a dragon, whom he believes to be their leader. The female knight reacts in shock, her eyes wide as she processes the startling information. A massive dragon, under the command of Lin Tian, breathes fire, engulfing a bridge in flames. As nearby warriors call out for the Saintess to intervene and put an end to this devastation. The Saintess observes the scattered skeletal remains, noting the traces of dragonfire and goblin bites on the bones. His eyes widen in alarm as she suddenly realizes something crucial. The Saintess, realizing they've fallen into a trap, urgently commands her troops to retreat. She dashes forward with intense speed, warning that their town, Guangming, is in imminent danger. The warrior's face is filled with shock and disbelief as he mutters in confusion. On the other side, a devastated town shrouded in smoke, with broken structures and debris scattered across the ground. The Saintess stands amidst the rubble and fallen bodies, surveying the destruction around her. She kneels amidst the ruins, stares in disbelief, whispering to herself that it can't be real. A young boy crying calls out, reaching for his father, who is dead on the ground. Behind them, Saintess observes the moment. She gently places her hand on the boy's shoulder, reassuring him as he clings to his father with worry in his eyes. He attempts to ease the boy's fear. The boy angrily swats away her hand, shouting accusations that reveal his resentment towards her, believing her protective acts to be insincere. The boy confronts the Saintess with fierce accusations, calling her a liar and expressing his mistrust openly, his anger evident in his clenched fists. Saintess, however, taken aback and visibly hurt by his words, stands frozen. The villagers glares with contempt and anger, hurling accusations at the Saintess, questioning her role and dismissing her as their protector. Saintess stares in shock, her face pale and drenched in sweat as the villagers' harsh words sink in, leaving her speechless and visibly shaken. She collapses, coughing up blood as the physical toll of the confrontation finally overwhelms her, her body succumbing to the immense strain. She kneels on the ground, defeated and vulnerable, while the villagers stand around her, pointing and shouting with hostility. The dragon woman stands confidently atop a pillar, smirking as she observes the chaos below, clearly satisfied with her manipulation. The woman's spirit without direct confrontation, relishing in the pain she's inflicted from afar. His gaze sharpens with anticipation, a sly smile forming as she looks forward to an impending encounter with Lin Tian. Under the serene light of a full moon, the village rests quietly within a forest, surrounded by a protective wooden fence. Under the moonlit sky, Lin Tian returns to the village, grabbing the attention of a goblin, who nervously announces his arrival. Lin Tian's stance and the goblin reaction suggest the return of a powerful leader. Lin Tian addresses his subordinates, questioning the success of their recent mission as he stands with a commanding presence. One of the goblin eagerly reports their victory in raiding a city, proudly mentioning the spoils and supplies they brought back. With a sinister grin, he points towards a cage holding two frightened women, proudly mentioning that some captives willingly surrendered to survive. The goblin reports on a special arrangement, explaining they provided a wagon of gold to ensure the safe departure of Kalia and her family from the city. Kalia, clutching a young child tightly, sits surrounded by treasure, her fearful eyes glancing back at the goblin. Lin Tian stepped forward. He commends the goblin, granting him the privilege of hunting magical beasts alongside his comrade as a reward. With a smirk, he reflects on sending Kalia away, acknowledging it as repayment for her past loyalty in this chaotic world. He smirks with satisfaction, confident that the sword-wielding Saintess has been utterly broken by their schemes. The thought of her downfall as he gazes into the distance. Several dark-winged creatures soar over a lush, sprawling forest, their ominous shadows casting a foreboding presence across the vibrant landscape below. In the dim cave, Lin Tian expresses gratitude towards the Dragon Queen, acknowledging that her assistance was crucial to the success of their plan. Standing with a respectful posture, he watches as she sits in the shadows. She remarks with dark satisfaction about the saint's severe illness, pleased by her suffering. He suggests that the Dragon Queen continue sending her dragon minions to keep the pressure on the saint's sanctuary, ensuring her misery is prolonged. She leans in with a sly smile, teasingly asking what reward she deserves for her exhausting efforts of sending dragons daily. Her tone is playful, yet her gaze holds a sinister edge. Lin Tian gestures toward the Dragon Queen around them, urging the demoness to take a closer look. He's suggesting there is more to be observed and understood in their shared plan. She grips Lin Tian's face with sharp claws, pulling him close in an intense and unsettling display of dominance. Her eyes hold a predatory gleam as she asserts her power over him, leaving him visibly tense and caught off guard by her sudden move. With a seductive smile, she leans in and declares that the reward she desires is him, her gaze bold and unwavering. Lin Tian, caught off guard, responds with disbelief to Dragon Queen's bold claim, questioning if she's joking about wanting him as her reward. The demoness leans over, speaking with a provocative confidence, dismissing any concerns about her previous actions involving the dragons. With a fierce look leans forward, her red eyes glowing intensely as she warns Lin Tian below, saying that if he refuses her, she will get very angry. He laughs with a mix of nervousness and self-deprecation, raising his hand as he assures her not to misunderstand. He humbly comments that, as a weak goblin, he couldn't possibly be worthy of someone as grand as her. She leans in closer with a playful expression, her lips parted as she softly murmurs something. She leans close to him. She tells him that he isn't just an ordinary goblin. She explains that she sees the potential of a goblin king within him, recognizing a power hidden beneath his humble appearance. With a sly smile and teasing, she licks her lips and reveals that her ancient dragon clan has always revered the strong. She embraces him closely, explaining with a determined look that her nature only allows her to unite with the strong, seeking to produce even stronger descendants. She conveys both her admiration for his potential strength and her desire to forge a powerful legacy. He looks visibly startled as she holds him tightly, his eyes wide with surprise. Stammering, he questions her actions, clearly flustered by her sudden embrace and bold intentions. Her face flushes deeply as she looks down, clearly affected by the situation. The group of dragon observe the distant scene with curious expressions. They seem puzzled, their attention drawn to the faint-hearted couple. Lin Tian looks at a floating screen displaying his newly unlocked achievements. His health has increased to 19, attack power to 600, and defense to 1400. He appears surprised and pleased by the substantial boost in his stats, realizing the newfound power he has gained. He cautiously moves past the dragon, careful not to wake it as he sneaks away. As he takes a careful step forward, his foot lands silently on the grass. Riding on the back of a dragon, he soars through the sky at high speed. He notes to himself the immense strength of the dragon mother, realizing that staying in her domain any longer would have been extremely dangerous. Looking past the narrows, dark and jagged cavern, surrounded by sharp rocks that create an ominous atmosphere, the Dragon Queen gazes at him with a thoughtful expression, musing that he truly matches her expectations. A hint of admiration crosses her face as she envisions a future where he might one day lead the goblins to create an entirely new world. The village under a bright blue sky, with sunlight streaming down over the thatched rooftops and trees. Suddenly, a loud exclamation pierces the tranquility. Kasana with a shocked expression confronts Lin Tian, clearly frustrated by what she just heard. Behind her, her mother with a concerned look quietly observes, unsure how to respond. Lin Tian stands confidently and addresses the elves with a calm yet assertive demeanor, explaining that they are now free to leave the place if they choose, thinking that they are more useful than human, so it's worth gambling to win their loyalty. The two elves listen intently, holding hands as a mix of hesitation. The mother in the green dress speaks firmly, addressing the group as she offers them the choice to leave if they wish. While the other women stand silently in the background, observing the exchange. Lin Tian narrowed his eyes as he looked at the elf. She kneels on the ground, placing one hand over her chest as she calmly explains that, through their recent interactions, she had come to realize Lin Tian was no ordinary goblin. She expressed her desire to remain with the tribe and follow him. Lin Tian stood with one hand in his pocket, quietly gazing back at her. With a quiet smile, he acknowledges that her decision is very smart and he promised not to cause trouble to other elves. He thinks inwardly that she stayed because she wanted to use him as a backer for the elves. Kasana, with tears in her eyes and mouth wide open, shouted at her mother, demanding to know how she could stay here all by herself. She knelt on the ground, placing a hand over her chest in gratitude. Calmly, she explains that she would stay as well. She would not leave and would follow only her mother and the leader from now on. Lin Tian, wearing a smug expression, explains as he had expected. He placed a hand over his chest, shouting with conviction that, since they had chosen to stay, they were no longer captives but his subordinates. He would ensure their safety. All the elves bowed down in a peaceful gesture, responding, "Thank you, Chief." Lin Tian responded with a confident smile, declaring that the Sword Saint had fallen and there was no external threat. This was the perfect golden period for development. He must cultivate a large number of hero-class goblins. His subordinate told him that the human race was too small for her. Meanwhile, the girl in the cage seemed terrified by his words. Lin Tian smiled with confidence. Lila, wearing a gentle smile, suggests that they can assist with artificial breeding to help the humans. Lin Tian, rubbing his forehead in frustration, reluctantly agrees, expressing that this seems to be the only viable solution. A goblin runs toward Lin Tian and Lila in panic, shouting urgently about something tragic that has happened. Lin Tian, looking concerned, and Lila, with a composed demeanor, turn to the goblin as he explains that someone named Gobushan seems to have died and pleads for them to check the situation quickly. Lin Tian's eyes widen in shock as he exclaims in disbelief, clearly alarmed by the news he has just heard. Lin Tian approaches questioning what has happened. The goblins frantically respond, claiming they don't know, while pointing toward the lifeless body of Gobushan, who appears to have collapsed in an uncontrollable frenzy. As the tension rises, Gobuzan's body undergoes a horrifying transformation. With sharp fangs and claws growing visibly, his skin taking on a monstrous appearance. A dark aura surrounds him, signifying something unnatural as his lifeless form suddenly springs back to life. Lin Tian and the goblins watch in shock and terror as Gobuzan, now unrecognizable and monstrous, rises menacingly, radiating overwhelming hostility. One of the goblins cries out in disbelief, exclaiming that Gobuzan has come back to life, while Lin Tian braces himself for the unforeseen danger ahead. The transformed Gobuzan emerges as a monstrous, terrifying creature, radiating an intense, dark aura with a massive tail tipped with a deadly blade. His body twists unnaturally, covered in spikes and jagged edges, showcasing his evolution into a fearsome being of destruction. The system screen reveals Gobuzan's stats, listing him as level 50 with the title, Resurrected Berserker. His immense power, boasting 1200 life points, 350 strength, and 400 defense, is further amplified by his deadly skills like Bone Spikes, Bone Sword, and Berserker's Heart, making him an unstoppable force of chaos. Lin Tian stares intently, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he reflects on the dire situation. He acknowledges that without the attributes he gained from the Purple Dragon Queen, defeating the newly transformed Gobuzan would be nearly impossible. Gobuzan, now exuding overwhelming confidence, boasts loudly about his newfound strength and laughs maniacally, declaring himself invincible. In response, Lin Tian, maintaining his composure, commends Gobuzan for his enhanced abilities and intelligence, advising him to focus on preparing the next generation of goblins. Gobuzan's triumphant laughter and the goblins' calls fade into the distance. Time skips forward 3 months, bringing a serene and sunny day under a clear blue sky. The town's surrounded by greenery. In the bar store, one armored man jokes loudly, questioning if the Sword Saintess will ever awaken after such a long time. His companions laugh heartily in response, with another remarking that they would have gone crazy waiting this long, their laughter filling the tavern. A cloaked figure with a commanding presence declares that the goblin problem can only be resolved by the Bloody Braveheart Guild, hinting at their expertise. His words draw the attention of the other adventurers in the tavern, who pause their chatter and focus intently. The leader of the Bloody Braveheart Guild, a diamond-ranked adventurer with striking pink hair and a commanding aura, stands confidently in his ornate armor and wide-brimmed hat adorned with feathers. Meanwhile, in a secluded area, a group of goblin infants play innocently, marking the success of 3 months of peaceful and steady breeding, resulting in 153rd generation heroic goblins ready to continue their legacy. In a quiet and secure environment, the goblin tribe thrives, with 153rd generation heroic goblins successfully raised over the past 3 months. Simultaneously, the royal family issues a bounty of 300 gold coins, summoning adventurers from various regions to infiltrate Bright Town with the sole mission of eradicating the growing goblin presence. Lin Tian stands confidently, analyzing the data, and acknowledges the gravity of facing such elite diamond-ranked adventurers. He notes that these opponents are leaders among humans with legendary-level capabilities, including mastery over the Sword Saintess herself, signaling the monumental challenge ahead. Lin Tian slouches lazily on a throne of fur, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he questions why there are no system prompts to guide him this time, leaving him to handle everything on his own. Just as he mulls over the situation, Lila and another elf approach with urgency, reporting that they have an important matter that requires his immediate attention. Lin Tian, seated on his throne with a calm yet attentive expression, asks what the issue is. The elves kneel before him, reporting that the latest batch of goblins has grown significantly, but the forest's magical resources are depleting, leaving many struggling to find enough food. Additionally, they mention that nearby iron mines are almost exhausted, leading to a shortage of weapons and equipment, which has negatively impacted training efficiency. Lin Tian's expression hardens as he analyzes the situation, realizing that the lack of resources in their current location and the abnormal activity in Bright Town make it untenable to stay. Concluding that a new, resource-rich, and defensible location is necessary for survival, he rises from his throne decisively. He commands the tribe to prepare for an immediate and complete relocation, ensuring their safety and future prosperity. Lila, taken aback by the sudden decision, questions the idea of relocating but quickly acknowledges Lin Tian's authority. With determination, she assures him that she will begin organizing the move immediately, while Mother Elf follows closely, equally surprised yet ready to assist. The scene transitions to a tranquil and resource-rich new location, featuring a majestic waterfall cascading into a clear blue pool. The group discovers a secluded cave hidden behind the waterfall, with its intricate and deep interior making it an ideal and secure new home. Lin Tian, leading the tribe with a flaming torch in hand, ventures into the dark labyrinth accompanied by his companions and goblins, their faces resolute as they begin exploring and claiming the cave as their new dwelling. Lin Tian takes charge with authority, instructing the goblins to clear the cave of debris, set up defenses, and prepare shelters for the women and children. In response, the goblins quickly acknowledge his command and get to work, their tools striking against the rock walls as sparks fly, marking the beginning of their efforts to transform the cave into a safe and functional home. A goblin holds a torch high as it begins marking the cave walls, preparing the space for their new settlement. Meanwhile, Lin Tian rallies the goblins, declaring that they must strictly follow his commands to ensure their survival. The goblins respond enthusiastically, shouting their loyalty and chanting praises for their leader as they eagerly begin carrying out his orders, transforming the cave into a thriving refuge. Lin Tian, having carefully settled everything, begins to contemplate his next steps. With everything in place, he prepares to investigate the situation ahead. He considers the next phase of his plan. If the system is correct, he knows that only after completing the risk assessment and carefully managing these dangerous tasks will he be able to proceed with the next steps of his strategy. At the bar, the bartender asks wasn't he only interested in hunting high-level monsters. Is he planning on hunting the goblins this time? Zyzer takes a sip from his drink and remarks that he's only going there to rescue his cousin Loader, and that he's simply left to handle the situation in his own way. The bartender, upon hearing this, seems to have understood the situation and gives a knowing look. Meanwhile, an older man in the background exclaims with surprise, clearly recognizing someone's Zyzer. The bartender, a bit exasperated, says that since man is handling the situation and taking the rewards for himself, he's not going to just sit idly by. He seems ready to get involved. The three individuals react with surprise. An older man, holding a staff with a large ruby gem, walks confidently as he declares that the reward for a certain task is his to take. He demands that no one else be allowed to claim it, except for him, and he requests a payment of 1,000 gold coins. Two individuals, clearly shocked, exclaim in surprise as they recognize who has entered. One shouts about the arrival of the Grey Hat Wizard, while the other reacts with disbelief, identifying him as the leader of the diamond-level Grey Hat Warrior team. The older man with the staff teases the man sitting at the bar, remarking on his confident attitude. The man responds, seemingly prepared for a conversation, but without giving much away, just asking a question in return. The older man, with a sinister smirk, his face twisted with an amused expression. Meanwhile, the man returns the gaze with intensity, his eyes sharp. The man with a mischievous grin mocks the situation, as if he's amused by the idea of the sword saint being mistaken for a saintly figure. He casually mentions that the women, assuming they are here to perform, can start their act. However, he quickly shifts his attention, warning the group not to forget the woman with a cold blood. Someone far more dangerous has arrived, the infamous adventurer, Lucilina. The group discusses the arrival of a dangerous man. One person expresses concern, wondering how this threat has arrived, mentioning that she's only after money and doesn't hesitate to kill anyone in her way. Another quickly tries to calm them down, warning them to stop talking before they attract more trouble and end up spilling blood. The man dressed in black addresses the other man, asking if he's a wandering adventurer who has come seeking something related to goblins. The man, appearing uninterested in the question, dismisses the idea, casually mentioning that he's not here for any grand purpose, just looking to pass the time and enjoy a little trouble. The man smirks as he declares that if he can survive a dragon's attack, he'll be able to earn his place as a legendary adventurer in history. He warns the group not to underestimate goblins, even though they might seem weak. He cautions them that despite their low rank, they have the potential to become dangerous, especially when dealing with those who are exceptionally terrifying, like the shapeshifters. The older man remarks that he's lived nearly 100 years, and in all that time, he's met more goblins than women. The two men discuss a low-rank tribe that has existed since ancient times, remarking that they have always been a problem for all other clans. One of them is shocked, revealing that even after thousands of years, the tribe's killings have never been fully stopped. The older man remarks that dealing with goblins is a troublesome matter. He adds that if it weren't for the reward, he wouldn't bother with this kind of trouble, clearly indicating that the allure of gold is what's driving him to endure the situation. The man reflects on the situation, acknowledging that indeed, the legendary sword saint and several knights have all fallen into the trap, effectively becoming prey for their enemies. He proposes to the older man that they should join forces to confront goblins. As he pours a drink, he adds that once the task is completed, he's curious about how the rewards will be distributed, particularly with all the gold on the line. The older man laughs heartily, clearly entertained by man's proposal. With a smile, he agrees to team up, pointing out that since the plan has been set, he's ready to join forces and take action. In the quiet morning, someone thinking about potential dangers, confidently declares that if anything threatens the Tian Quang clan, he will take action without hesitation, suggesting that he is fully prepared to step in should the situation require it. He, looking at a map laid out before him, plans to take a group into the forest and handle the situation by force. As he outlines his strategy, he, studying a map, points out that there's too much unknown in the current plan. He suggests that they should proceed with caution, carefully stepping through the details before moving forward with any concrete actions. The older man, shaking his head in frustration, comments on the younger generation's lack of patience. He tells the man to handle the situation however he sees fit, stating that he's done his part and won't take responsibility for the outcome. He, looking at the situation with a serious expression, mutters to himself. Meanwhile, a heavily armored knight in the background makes a noticeable appearance. Sixer dismissively comments, "What a strange person." The older man, glancing at the situation, smirks and casually remarks that he didn't expect Goblin Slayer to get involved as well. "I am not joking, he is legit called Goblin Slayer, anyway." He then suggests to man that, instead of focusing on that, they should sit down and have a chat. Sixer is startled and wide-eyed, exclaims in disbelief upon hearing the name. He, noticing the awkwardness of the situation, admits that he's failed to show proper respect. He apologizes for not recognizing the person earlier. Meanwhile, the knight, sternly standing in front of him, states that he prefers not to be recognized by too many people and asks if he truly believes he has any special skills. He, observing the situation, mutters to himself about the strange individual standing before him. Sixer comments that not only is this person unusual. The older man, laughing heartily, makes a joke about the absurdity of the situation. He mentions that the person before them is notorious for being involved in a few goblin hunts and, according to rumors, he even killed thousands of goblins in a single battle. The man is shocked and incredulous, responding that such a claim seems far too exaggerated. The knight invites the man to join their group, suggesting that they should team up with goblins' forces. He mentions that by doing so, they can work together under goblins' leadership and gain strength. He's smiling confidently. The knight firmly states that he doesn't need any alliances, and instead, all they'll end up doing is targeting his weak spots. The older man dismisses the idea of waiting for any further schemes or opportunities. Clearly uninterested in the idea of building alliances or relying on such plans, he emphasizes that when goblins eventually gets captured, he'll be the one begging others for help, a fate he finds quite amusing. He scolds the group for hesitating. He insists that they stop wasting time and let the younger one handle the situation, making it clear that they shouldn't let this opportunity slip away. Meanwhile, the man, caught off guard, questions if it's truly the right time. The scenes shift to a wide view of the landscape. In the foreground, everyone walking. Meanwhile, in a distant, higher vantage point, Lin Tian is seen observing from a cliff, deep in thought. In the intense moment, his eyes glow with a sharp blue light. As he zooms in, we see a detailed view of the knight from behind. A system appears, displaying Goblin Slayer as a level 65 human with overwhelming attributes. His life points, strength, and defense are all high, with his abilities and gear enhancing his combat prowess. Lin Tian, surprised by the extreme stats, reacts in disbelief, wondering how someone could possess such overpowering abilities. ranging from 1,000 to 3,000 in total strength. Lin Tian, with a sinister grin, questions the system with a dark and unsettling tone. He seems to be anticipating some kind of issue, suggesting that the system might run into trouble. The system confirming that there are no issues at the moment regarding the situation. Moments later, the group of armored riders approaches the city gates, preparing to enter. Lin Tian's eyes glowing with anticipation, remarks with a hint of excitement as the situation becomes more tense. The system screen reveals the stats for Zisner, the professional knight. With his expertise as a saint and advanced control over magic, his total combat strength reaches 1,300. The system screen now displays the stats for Gru, a powerful and seasoned grand sorcerer. With a wide range of magical abilities, his overall combat strength reaches an impressive 1,400. The system warns that he is a much tougher opponent to face, given his formidable magic skills and advanced techniques. Lin Tian, eyeing the two individuals ahead, evaluates the situation. He remarks that, from the looks of them, these two aren't particularly intimidating and shouldn't pose a major issue. Lin Tian, having carefully settled everything, begins to contemplate his next steps. With everything in place, he prepares to investigate the situation ahead. He considers the next phase of his plan. If the system is correct, he knows that only after completing the risk assessment and carefully managing these dangerous tasks will he be able to proceed with the next steps of his strategy. The warrior in silver armor, standing against a backdrop of lush greenery, grips the hilt of his sword. He seems focused, his thoughts lingering on Lin Tian. Meanwhile, onto the forested area, the abandoned site of the Heavenly Frenzy tribe. The group are scattered across the open field. The landscape is peaceful yet hints at an undercurrent of tension. The older man, holding a staff topped with a red gem, remarks on the oddity of not finding traces of a large settlement like Lin Tian's, which should have been discovered earlier. He notes the scattered signs of past battles along the way, confirming the location is nearby. Suddenly, the man calls out to him excitedly, beckoning him to examine something he's found in the grass. The old man turns as stunned by this revelation. The older man inspects a strand of hair handed to him, rubbing it between his fingers before bringing it to his nose for a closer examination. The man approaches, identifying it as elven hair. He speculates whether the elves could have intervened to hide the Lin Tian tribe, but dismisses the idea as improbable. The older man places the strand of hair into a jar containing a glowing liquid and explains that the forest lacks conditions to conceal an entire settlement. He concludes the elves likely relocated the Lin Tian tribe and covered their tracks. He releases a blue butterfly from the jar, noting it is particularly attracted to the scent of elves as it flutters into the air. The older man suggests the butterfly might help track the elves and the Lin Tian tribe. As the butterfly flutters towards a nearby river, it seems to lose the trail. The group speculates if the target crossed the river, observing the surroundings for further clues. The man suggests waiting for Lin Tian's assassins to appear, confident they can take the initiative. The older man dismisses the idea, pointing across the river to a spot near the forest's edge. The goblin identified as Lin Tian appears on the opposite riverbank, moving stealthily. The group immediately gives chase, crossing the terrain with urgency. Lin Tian stands with a sly grin. Behind him looms a massive red dragon, its breath heavy and menacing. Lin Tian calmly declares, "Good, the prey has taken the bait." Lin Tian looks surprised, as he notices someone crossing the river with swift movements. From his vantage point, he observes a knight approaching. Lin Tian thinking how unexpected it is for this knight to show up, especially with such an eerie smile. He mutters that he intended to handle other targets first, but it seems the plan is changing. Lin Tian's expression twists into shock as he exclaims, "This is..." His gaze falls on discarded knight armor on the ground, and his realization hits hard. A golden-haired woman emerges gracefully from the water, stretching as sunlight glints off her wet skin, seemingly unaware of Lin Tian's presence nearby. He smirks, realizing the so-called Goblin Slayer is actually a woman. He observes her closely, noting her appearance doesn't seem fully human. Despite the situation, she appears unfazed, casually bathing with no regard for potential danger, which Lin Tian finds oddly intriguing. He narrows his eyes, sensing something unnatural, as if she's deliberately luring him closer. He wonders if she's already noticed him. Without hesitation, he steps onto his red dragon, which takes to the skies with a powerful sweep of its wings. Flying on his dragon, evaluates the woman's strength, deciding it's better to deal with her companions first. Meanwhile, she stands confidently, her movements graceful yet provocative, and wonders what kind of extraordinary being she truly is. Her playful smirk and teasing gestures leave him both curious and slightly unnerved. The team encounters a lifeless goblin sprawled on the ground. The man signals the group to stay alert, warning that the Lin Tian tribe must be nearby. Suddenly, a barrage of fiery projectiles rains down, forcing everyone to brace for impact. The ambush has begun. The older man reacts swiftly, summoning a flaming orb and shouting for everyone to dodge. A powerful counterattack bursts forth, clashing with the incoming assault. The man praises the old man's quick reflexes, joking that his skills haven't aged a bit. The older man, staying sharp, cuts him off, warning that the barrage isn't over yet. The group braces as the old man yells, "It's here." A ferocious goblin warrior leaps into view, wielding a massive weapon and charging straight at them with incredible speed. The old man quickly identifies the enemy as a hero type, shouting for everyone to focus their attacks. The tension spikes as the group prepares to counter this overwhelming force. A massive explosion tore through the battlefield as flames erupted, consuming everything in their path. The goblin held his ground, his menacing frame outlined by the blazing inferno behind him. He snarled, gripping his weapon tightly as the ground trembled beneath his feet. The group nearby scrambled, their spells struggling to contain the devastation. Smoke and ash swirled as the warrior emerged unscathed, his body crackling with dark energy. His tattered flesh regenerated before their eyes, driving fear into the stunned group. The elder clutched his glowing staff, disbelief etched on his face as he shouted orders to retreat. Undeterred, the goblin roared and charged, the ground fracturing under his immense power. The group faltered, their once confident expressions now replaced with panic. The man shouted a warning, drawing his sword as goblins rushed forward in a chaotic swarm. Their crude weapons gleamed under the sunlight as they charged, but their formation was reckless, scattering before the advancing warriors. The elder barked orders from the rear, his staff glowing with a crimson light. He pointed out the strange armor the goblins were wearing, warning that close combat would be dangerous. Suddenly, a magic circle erupted on the battlefield, radiating a brilliant blue light. Their energy restoring as the spell pulsed with life. The knight rallied his strength, his sword ready as the rejuvenated warriors prepared to strike back. High above, a mage unleashed an icy barrage. Crystalline spears rained down, piercing through the goblins and freezing their advance in an instant. A mage slammed his hand to the ground, activating a spell. The sand beneath the charging goblins shifted violently, turning into a chaotic, sinking trap. The goblin lost their footing, stumbling and screaming as the ground swallowed them. Elsewhere, a dark rain began to fall, sharp, poisonous droplets piercing through shields and armor. Goblins recoiled in pain, some collapsing as the deadly rain drenched the battlefield. The clash intensified as goblins roared, pointing toward the rocky heights where their leaders, Lin Tian, stands. One of the goblins issued a command, signaling for an all-out push. He ordered the others to create an opening for their strongest fighters to storm the enemy's position. The battlefield trembled under the goblins' renewed charge, Lin Tian watching closely from above, their eyes gleaming with wicked intent. A goblin hurled himself off the cliff, flames erupting around his body as he plummeted toward the battlefield. The ground beneath him cracked and exploded on impact, a shockwave rippling through the area as he crouched, surrounded by smoke and fire. Without hesitation, the goblin charged forward, his body engulfed in fiery energy. His claws raked the air as he surged toward his target, leaving scorched trails in his wake. The mage standing in his path barely had time to react. The goblin's claw struck with brutal force, ripping through the mage's defenses. The elder staggered, his face twisted in pain as the burning claws dug in. His dark aura twisted like smoke, his movements relentless and sharp. The elder stumbled backward, gripping his staff tightly, but the goblin was already too close. Elsewhere, the battlefield descended into chaos as the massive, Axe Goblin slammed into a group of soldiers, sending bodies flying. His overwhelming strength was unmatched, his every strike leaving destruction in its wake. The man rallied his men, yelling for shields to be raised. The soldiers hesitated for only a moment before bracing themselves, their shields trembling as the monstrous enemy bore down on them. With a resounding crash, the axe connected, sparks flying as steel clashed against steel. The soldiers held firm, but the goblin showed no signs of slowing, his bloodthirsty grin growing wider with each attack. The man raised his sword, invoking a divine force as golden energy radiated around him. His voice carried resolve, calling upon holy power to drive out the darkness. Flames of light surged upward, forming a massive vortex that illuminated the battlefield. The sheer intensity of the spell left enemies stunned. From the center of the chaos, the man barked orders to his allies, demanding they regroup and protect the injured. He directed healers to focus their efforts while the frontliners braced for the next assault. The goblins hesitated, their advantage slipping away as the humans rallied. With fiery determination in his eyes, the knight roared his intent to annihilate the enemy. His fury fueled the glowing blade in his hands, the overwhelming radiance signaling the start of a relentless counterattack. Lin Tian stood in the shadows, his gaze cold as he analyzed the adventurous strength. He noted their capabilities, admitting they were far stronger than expected. Yet, a smirk played on his lips as he muttered to himself, dismissing their efforts as misplaced. They had come to the wrong place. Behind him, a goblin fiery creature emerged, its glowing spikes radiating malevolence. Goblins scattered, their fear palpable as the beast advanced with terrifying speed. Its claws tore through the battlefield, its roar shaking the ground. The elder eyes widened in shock as he recognized the abomination, a mutated variant. His voice trembled as he shouted a warning to the others, his grip on the staff tightening as the creature approached. The woman stood tall, her sly smile laced with mockery as she observed the battlefield below. Her taunting presence was enough to draw the attention of the fighters, her demeanor exuding both beauty and danger. Suddenly, a powerful blow landed, and the elder staggered, blood spurting from his mouth as he collapsed. The sound echoed across the battlefield. Meanwhile, the goblin emerged from the carnage, its spiked tail lashing through the air. Goblins scrambled to clear its path, fear gripping them as the beast towered over its surroundings, exuding an aura of raw destruction. A goblin sneered, his glowing red eyes filled with malice. His grin widened as he relished the chaos, clearly relishing the upper hand in the battle. The man staggered backward, his sword trembling in his grip as a monstrous claw slashed toward him. His face twisted in panic, beads of sweat dripping down as he tried to steady himself. He could barely speak, stammering out a desperate plea. Nearby, the elder lay collapsed on the ground, his hand reaching out shakily. Bloodied and gasping for air, he cried out for help, his voice growing weaker with each breath. The man fell to his knees, his strength failing him as the elder's desperate hand stretched toward him. His eye widened in terror as the creature's claw loomed closer. His breathing quickened, panic overtaking him as he stumbled backward, unable to react. The battlefield descended into chaos, filled with screams and the relentless sound of heavy footsteps. Nearby, the elder lay on the ground, his voice growing weaker as he begged for help. The beast loomed over him, its tail swaying menacingly. His cries echoed, but no one came to his aid. The man's scream broke through the chaos as he fell to his knees, clutching his head in despair. Arrows rained down on him, his armor denting under the relentless assault. With each hit, his resolve crumbled, replaced by frantic cries for salvation. From the shadows, a towering man stepped forward, its presence radiating menace. The knight's expression shifted to pure dread as he realized he was utterly outmatched. His pleas for help went unanswered as his enemies descended, sealing his fate. The darkness was overwhelming, as blood splashes began to appear against the wall, accompanied by faint sounds of struggle and desperation. The man, his face pale and drenched in sweat, his expression his fear. His breathing was uneven as tears streamed down his face, and his lips quivered in a silent scream. The battlefield strewn with the lifeless bodies of armored soldiers and luffen goblins. Swords pierced through the fallen, the ground soaked with blood as the remnants of a brutal fight lay before him. Man, battered and weary, knelt before Knight, expressing his gratitude with visible desperation to repay the favor, though his trembling voice fear. Despite the sincerity, Knight remained aloof, towering over him. Instead of acknowledging Man's gratitude, Knight dismissed him with cold disdain, mocking his intentions. He made it clear that repayment was unnecessary and advised Man to stay far away, implying that someone like him had no place near Knight's path. As Knight turned to leave, cast an intimidating shadow over the man. The man tried to warn him of the dangers ahead, but Knight's confidence was unwavering. Without stopping, he coldly remarked that the farther the challenge, the better. The forest's rocky terrain gave way to a narrow ravine, surrounded by jagged cliffs and patches of greenery. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting faint shadows over the path below. The massive goblin, his red eyes glowing with malice. With a sinister grin, he grabbed the frail body of older man, holding him tightly as if to assert his dominance. The goblin's twisted laughter echoed in the confined space. The massive goblin's grin faltered as he suddenly flinched in pain. A sharp, unexpected attack had struck his shoulder, forcing him to release his grip momentarily. The massive goblin's eyes widened in shock as his strength began to falter. A surge of pain overtook him, and his expression twisted into one of disbelief. He collapsed heavily onto the ground, his lying lifeless beside the older man he had held moments earlier. Surrounding them were numerous other goblins, their weapons raised as they glared menacingly. From above the cliff, Lin Tian stood silently, observing down below. His posture was calm yet commanding, as if assessing the aftermath of the battle. Lin Tian, with a sharp gaze and a sinister smile, looked down below. His expression with curiosity, as if reveling in the carnage while questioning the unexpected turn of events. Below, the goblin warriors stood frozen, surrounding the fallen massive goblin and the older man's lifeless body. The knight among the goblins stepped forward. Goblin Slayer, shrouded in heavy armor and wielding a fearsome blade, stepped forward to confront the goblins. He commanding as he addressed the group, identifying their leader with cutting disdain. The goblin shouted in rage, declaring that the armored knight was a threat that needed to be eliminated. His red eyes glowed intensely, revealing his ferocious intent to kill. As the goblins charged, their war cries echoed through the battlefield, but the knight, with an imposing stance, stood ready to counter. The towering creatures surrounded him, attempting to overpower with sheer numbers. The knight's armor glinted under the fading sunlight, with his crimson gaze shining through the helm. In one swift motion, the knight unleashed a powerful upward slash, sending goblins flying in all directions. The force of his attack created a shockwave that left the remaining creatures stunned and the battlefield momentarily silent. Lin Tian observed from the cliff, with a sharp and calculating gaze. Below, the area seemed to ripple with malevolent energy as the massive goblin let out a guttural roar. The creature's body twisted grotesquely, sprouting menacing spikes and pulsating with dark red energy, becoming an embodiment of chaos and destruction. The newly transformed goblin charged forward with a ferocious roar, its claws slicing through the air as trails of blood-red energy followed its every movement. It dashed toward the knight with terrifying speed, leaving deep scars on the ground, its intent to annihilate evident in its glowing eyes and savage growls. As the battle between the knight and the frenzied goblin unfolded, the knight taunted the goblin, mocking its reckless charge. With swift precision, he slashed downward, severing the goblin's attack mid-motion, leaving it incapacitated in a single, decisive strike. The knight then raised his axe, channeling immense power, and brought it crashing down upon another goblin, his movements exuding an air of absolute dominance. The knight swiftly raised his axe to counter, but the goblin's quick reflexes created a momentary stalemate. As the goblin mocked his efforts, it spewed a sticky, mud-like substance that latched onto the knight's armor. The knight, visibly struggling under the weight of the substance, realized the goblin's cunning plan was to immobilize him completely. Despite the knight's immense power, the adhesive began to take its toll, forcing him to strategize his next move carefully. Lin Tian stands atop a dragon, his crimson eyes glowing with malice as he evaluates the situation. He observes his enemy's movements, formulating a strategy to maintain an advantageous distance while ensuring control of the battlefield. His sinister smirk hints at an imminent ambush. As Lin Tian retreats atop the dragon, he orders his goblin army to encircle their foe. Spears glint in the sunlight as goblins form ranks, ready to attack. The dragon lets out a deafening roar. Meanwhile, the knight struggles against the sticky substance trapping his movements. Determined, he vows not to falter in the face of adversity, his resolve shining through his eyes. Despite the odds, he braces himself for the upcoming clash, fully aware of the peril ahead. As massive boulders rain down from above, crashing into the ground with tremendous force, scattering debris and shaking the earth. The knight, unfazed by the chaotic bombardment, skillfully dodges the falling rocks. Then, with a decisive movement, he leaps into action, his sword glowing with energy as he slashes through the air, cleaving a boulder clean in half, the sheer power of his attack leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. He landing a powerful strike that embeds his massive sword deep into the ground. Exhausted but undeterred, the knight kneels beside the blade, using it for support while catching his breath. Observing from a distance, Lin Tian smirks arrogantly, mocking the knight's endurance as he notes that the prolonged battle seems to be taking its toll. The knight, exhausted and battered from the intense battle, raises their trembling hand to remove the helmet that had shielded them for countless encounters. The helmet clatters to the ground, revealing the face of a warrior unlike any other, an elf with golden hair cascading down, eyes glowing with an ethereal light and a gentle yet fierce presence. The revelation leaves the surroundings in stunned silence, as this was not the hardened soldier everyone expected. A chorus of sinister laughter erupts from a group of goblins lurking nearby. Their twisted faces, drooling fangs, and glowing red eyes reflect their vile intentions as they leer at the warrior. The goblins, emboldened by the revelation, seem to relish the opportunity to strike, unaware of the hidden strength within their target and seemingly maddened by the fragrance exuded by the female knight.